Entire islands vanishing into thin air, 30 whales mysteriously washing ashore dead, a remote island where people keep turning up dead. We've all heard about the lost city of Atlantis, but what about other islands that mysteriously vanish? One of the strangest cases in recent history is Sandy Island, which was charted back in 1774 by Captain James Cook. It appeared on maps for centuries, even being recorded on Google Maps as recently as 2012. But here's where it gets really weird. When Australian scientists went to find it that same year, 2012, they came up empty. They recorded ocean depths of over 4,300 feet or 1,310 meters where the island should have been, but no island, just deep water. So was Sandy Island ever really there? Some think it could have been a cartographer's error or a phantom island that only appeared on maps because of miscalculations or mistaken sightings, but with no answers and no island to show for it, Sandy Island is one of the strangest and eeriest mysteries of the Pacific. Koh Tao or Turtle Island in the Gulf of Thailand is known for its beautiful beaches, coral reefs, and resorts. It really does look like quite the getaway, but it's also sometimes referred to as Death Island. So how did it get that nickname? Well, it all started with a string of mysterious deaths. In 2012, a young man named Ben Harrington died after a apparent motorcycle accident on the island, but there was more to it. His wallet and watch were missing. His mother, of course, suspected foul play, especially after the coroner kind of hesitated to call it an accident. In 2014, two British backpackers, Hannah Withridge and David Miller, were found dead on the same beach where Ben had stayed 2 years earlier. Local police mishandled the crime scene and rushed to blame two migrant workers who were eventually convicted, but crucial evidence like DNA samples were never collected. As if that weren't disturbing enough, 2 weeks later another body turned up on that same beach, 24-year-old Luke Miller, found at the bottom of a swimming pool. Then a woman vanished from a Koh Tao hostel, and 6 weeks later the body of Belgian tourist Elise Del Magni was found. Her body had been wrapped in t-shirts. Then in January of 2015, Christina Marion Ansley's body was discovered in a bungalow, but authorities waited days to conduct a post-mortem. The UK's coroner rejected the Thai results, citing incompetence. With no answers or closure, rumors of a serial killer family on the island started to spread, but till this day we still don't know for sure. In 2015, something strange happened off the coast of Alaska when 30 whales stranded themselves on the shores of Kodiak Archipelago. Almost all of them died, and nearly every one of the whales was a fin whale. Experts also realized that the whales likely all died around the same time. Now, at first scientists thought toxic algae might have caused it, but they quickly ruled that out because no other species of marine animals showed similar signs of death. A few months earlier, though, a mass die-off of birds occurred along the same coastline, but they weren't sure if the birds and the whales died from the same cause. It's possible that there were more dead whales out there that either got eaten by scavengers or drifted out of reach. On January 29, 1921, the Carrol A Deering, a schooner, was headed home to Virginia after a trip to Barbados. As it passed a light ship off the coast of North Carolina, the captain of the watch vessel noticed something odd. The crew of the Deering appeared to be wandering aimlessly on the deck, and when the lightship's overseer called out, a crew member yelled back saying they had lost their anchors. Just a few days later, another ship, the SS Lake Ellen, spotted the Carrol A Deering again. The captain of the Lake Ellen wrote in his log that the crew seemed to be acting strangely and that the ship was drifting off on a, quote, peculiar course. Then 2 days later, the US Coast Guard discovered the Deering had washed up on North Carolina's Outer Banks. The weather was too bad for a full inspection, but they did notice that the Deering was missing its lifeboats. When the Coast Guard returned after the weather had cleared, they found something even stranger on the ship. Nothing but a full meal that was cooked, prepared, and perfectly laid out, sitting completely untouched, as if the crew had vanished in the middle of eating. All their personal items were also gone. It was like no one had ever been on board at all. Until this day, the mystery has never been solved. The lost continent of Mu, also known as Lemuria, is one of the most mysterious ocean myths. According to some theories, Mu is a massive civilization that existed in the Pacific Ocean between 10,000 and 50,000 years ago, home to over 60 million people. These people were believed to belong to a highly advanced culture known as the Nakal. The idea of Mu was first introduced by Augustus Le Plongeon, a British-American writer, who argued that Egypt and Mesoamerica were created by survivors of this lost land. Later, James Churchward expanded on this theory, writing that Mu was located somewhere between Easter Island and the Marianas. Churchward claimed that the continent was destroyed by a series of catastrophic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. But modern geologists have strongly rejected this idea, pointing out that it's impossible for a continent to disappear so quickly. But even still, the legend of Mu persists to this day. The Black Sea, often referred to as both the inhospitable sea and the hospitable sea, is said to be a very mysterious place. This stretch of water has seen more than its fair share of strange sightings and unexplained disappearances. In 2000, for example, an explorer named Robert Ballard made a pretty fascinating discovery, finding evidence that a massive flood may have wiped out ancient civilizations in the Black Sea. Throughout the Middle Ages, sailors reported seeing mysterious whirlpools that would suddenly appear, even on calm waters, pulling ships and entire islands into the depths. The whirlpools were so feared that fishermen avoided the area altogether, believing that it was cursed. And even more recently, in 1945, 5 Soviet bombers vanished over the Black Sea, never to be seen again. A similar incident occurred in 1990 when a Greek plane disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Then in 1991, a Russian oil rig was found abandoned in the sea with all 80 workers missing and their possessions and half-eaten meals left behind. And these are just a handful of the mysterious things that have happened in the Black Sea. In October of 1988, 2 friends, Michael Calvin and John Blissett, set out from Fremantle, Australia on a luxury schooner called the Patanella. During the trip, Calvin sent a letter to his twin sister telling her how great the weather was and how much fun he and Blissett were having. They were also excited about starting their own charter business once they returned home after Christmas. Before they left, Calvin and Blissett even decided to put a message in a bottle to send out to sea, offering a free holiday on board their boat for anyone who found the letter. But the men were never seen or heard from again. The ship vanished off the coast of Sydney, but nearly 20 years later, in 2007, a woman named Carrol A found an old bottle while beachcombing, and inside was a note that read, "Hi there, out here in the lonely Southern Ocean, and thought we would give away a free holiday." The note also had Blissett's phone number and the Patanella's position when it was sent out. Till this day, though, the wreckage of the ship has never been found. In February of 1968, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered submarine, left Norfolk, Virginia, headed for the Mediterranean. With nearly a decade of reliable service, there was no reason to suspect anything wrong would happen, but just a few months later, something did. On May 27, 1968, families waited for the Scorpion to return, but it never did. By October, the Navy found the wreckage on the ocean floor and found that all 99 men aboard had died. But there were no clear answers as to what had happened. In 1985, famous explorer Robert Ballard, again who would later discover the Titanic wreck, visited the Scorpion site, but even he couldn't solve the mystery. Over the years, several theories have been put forward. Some think the Scorpion was attacked by the Soviets. Others think the sub accidentally fired one of its own torpedoes during a training exercise and it turned back and hit the Scorpion, but unfortunately, we may never know for sure. In February of 1748, just before Valentine's Day, the Lady Lovibond set sail off the coast of England, heading home to celebrate the captain's wedding. But things got sour during the journey when the captain discovered that his bride-to-be was actually in love with his best friend. So the captain decided to take his own life, as well as everyone else on board, steering the ship straight into the Goodwin Sands. Everyone died in the disaster. And since that day, though, there have been sightings of a ship that looks eerily similar to the Lady Lovibond. Over the years, sailors have reported encounters with what seemed to be a ghost ship. Captains sailing near the Goodwin Sands have claimed to see a ship appear out of nowhere, only for it to vanish before they could reach it. Others have spotted what looked like a wrecked ship in the distance, only to find nothing when they get closer. The most famous story happened in the early 1900s, though, when locals in Kent saw a 3-masted ship heading full speed toward the Goodwin Sands, and knowing it would crash, they rushed to help, but when they arrived, nothing was there. In 1906, the SS Valencia was caught in a violent storm off the coast of British Columbia, Canada. Rescue boats rushed to the scene and lifeboats were deployed, but only 37 people survived. Then in 1910, things took a strange turn. That year, people started claiming that they'd seen a phantom ship drifting in the area. Locals in British Columbia and fishermen out at sea were spotting lifeboats, and they were filled with skeletons. Many believe the ghostly lifeboats were somehow connected to the Valencia, and the creepy events didn't stop here either. In 1933, nearly 30 years after the Valencia sank, the ship's number 5 lifeboat was discovered completely intact in British Columbia's Barkley Sound. Despite being out in open ocean for decades, exposed to the harsh sea and salty water, the lifeboat showed no signs of wear or damage. When the rest of the wreckage of the Valencia was later found near a 100-foot high bluff, no one could explain how that lifeboat survived so perfectly intact for so long. The mystery of the Valencia and its phantom lifeboats remains unsolved. One of the creepiest unsolved mysteries of the ocean is the Vela incident. It was September 22nd of 1979 when a strange, bright flash of light lit up the skies near the Indian Ocean. The flash was detected by an American satellite which was monitoring for nuclear tests. Now, this flash appeared to be from a nuclear explosion, but it didn't come from any country that was openly conducting tests at the time. The location of the flash was near the southern coast of Africa, and it seemed to match the exact area where an unknown ship might have been conducting a secret nuclear test, but no one knew who would have been behind it. Some theories go that it could have been Israel testing a nuclear weapon in secret, or even a rogue South African operation, but no one's ever come out and said anything. Here's the extra eerie part though. Despite what seemed to be a nuclear test, there was no fallout, no debris. It's a very strange case, and most of the details about it seem to be pretty hush-hush. So was it a secret nuclear test, an accident, or something else entirely? The Palmyra Atoll is said to be one of the most eerie remote places on Earth. This tiny island, just 1.5 miles long, was discovered in 1798 by Captain Edward Fanning, who supposedly had a strange feeling about it before even seeing it. Fanning, sailing through the Pacific, was jolted awake 3 times during the night by an intense sense of danger. The final time, he found himself inexplicably dressed and rushing to the deck. His gut feeling led him to stop the ship for the night, and in the morning they saw what he had sensed: deadly reefs lying just ahead. If he'd ignored his instincts, the ship and its crew would have been lost. Since then, Palmyra's become rather infamous for bizarre and tragic events. One of the most disturbing incidents happened in 1974 when a couple, Mac and Muff Graham, arrived on the island for a visit. They were joined by another couple, Buck Walker and his girlfriend Stephanie Stearns, but things quickly turned dark. Walker, a fugitive with a violent past, killed the Grahams for their boat and supplies. According to Stearns, Walker killed them and their bodies were hidden in a metal container. Muff Graham's remains were discovered 6 years later by a couple visiting the island, washed up on the shore. It was found that Muff had been dismembered before being burnt and dumped. Mac's remains, however, were never found. But that's not the only dark thing to have taken place here. Hal Horton, a Navy officer stationed on Palmyra during World War II, spoke openly about the strange and tragic incidents that seemed to plague this island, including aircraft vanishing. Horton was quoted telling of how at least 2 planes were lost in broad daylight, their pilots mysteriously vanishing. He also mentioned the frequent equipment malfunctions that pilots experienced while landing or taking off from the island. According to Horton, these issues were so frequent that sailors and officers stationed there started calling it the Palmyra Curse. Horton described the island as incredibly small, so much so that a plane flying just 10,000 feet above it on a cloudy day might not even spot it. Once we heard a plane overhead, but he crashed in the drink before he could find the runway, Horton said. Tragically, the pilot didn't survive. We didn't get to the poor guy fast enough. Sharks found him first, he added. It didn't seem like it was just all bad luck. There was apparently this sense that something was just off about the place. In 2015, Japan's Coast Guard came across at least 12 wooden boats carrying the decaying bodies of 22 people. Some were nearly skeletons, 2 were even missing heads. The first boat appeared in October, and then more turned up in November. The Japan Coast Guard was left trying to piece together the mystery as to where these boats came from and what had happened to the people on board. The boats looked like they'd come from North Korea. One clue was found on a boat that carried 10 decomposing bodies. The hull had Korean lettering that read North Korea's military. Another clue was a tattered piece of cloth which looked like it could be from a North Korean flag. Some believe these boats were just lost fishing vessels. Others think they might have been used by defectors trying to escape North Korea. The thing is, this isn't an isolated incident. North Korean ghost ships wash up in Japan all the time. Every year, derelict boats from North Korea wash up on Japan's shores, some with no crew, others carrying the remains of those lost at sea. Most of these ghost ships seem to be North Korean fishermen who get stranded out at sea, but that doesn't explain every case. In March of 1918, the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy ship nearly 550 feet long, vanished without a trace, leading to one of the biggest mysteries in naval history. The ship, carrying a crew of 306 and tons of manganese ore, was on its way from Brazil to Baltimore. The last message sent was simply, "Weather fair, all well," but the ship was never heard from again. Not even an SOS was received. She just disappeared as though some gigantic monster of the sea had grabbed her, men and all, and sent her into the depths. That's what was written in Santa Fe magazine a couple years after the disappearance. Now, as for what happened, some think maybe a German submarine sank the ship, but no evidence ever turned up to support that. Marvin Barish, whose ancestor was one of the Cyclops' crew, has spent years researching this mystery. He believes mechanical failures combined with the ship's heavy cargo may have caused it to capsize, especially near the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest part of the Atlantic. He's still hoping that modern technology might one day uncover the wreckage, saying, "I just want her to be found. I want the 309 to be at rest, as well as the families." In 1946, something strange happened over Scandinavia. Reports started flooding in from Sweden, Finland, and Norway about bright, mysterious objects in the sky. Sometimes during the day, and sometimes at night. One report even mentioned a rocket-like object crashing into a lake, but nothing was ever recovered. These sightings became so widespread that the phenomenon was dubbed the Swedish ghost rockets. Some think the objects were Soviet missiles, leftovers from German V-2 rockets. In fact, by 1946, the Soviets had begun their own missile program, testing missiles in the exact region where the ghost rockets were reported. The timing fit perfectly, and for a while, a lot of people believed these rockets were Soviet-made weapons being tested in secret. But it turns out that the Soviets hadn't actually launched any V-2 missiles in 1946. After the war, the Germans' V-2 factories were mostly scavenged by the Allies, and the Soviets were behind in missile development, so while it made sense at the time, we're just not sure if that theory holds up today. As the reports continued to come in, though, back in the day, the press began calling the objects flying bombs. Some even speculated they were alien spacecraft. Eventually, scientists came out saying there was no solid evidence that any missiles had been launched, and said that some of these supposed rockets were probably just shooting stars. But if that were the case, I mean, why was it only happening then? What, I mean, people had never seen a shooting star before? It just seems like a weak explanation to me. Till this day, we still don't know for sure what happened over the Baltic Sea that year. The Michigan Triangle, which makes up this area of the water that you see here, is almost just as strange as the notorious Bermuda Triangle. Over the years, ships, planes, and the people on them have vanished, and many of these cases are still unsolved. One of the earliest incidents dates back to 1679, when the French sailing ship Le Griffon disappeared without a trace after leaving Green Bay. No wreckage has ever been found for that one. Then there's the bizarre case of the Rosabelle, a schooner that capsized twice with no sign of its crew. In 1921, the ship was found overturned, the crew missing. Even more strange, The captain had a premonition before setting sail and had refused to board that day, which ended up saving his life. On April 28, 1937, Captain George R. Donner was in command of a ship traveling from Erie, Pennsylvania to Port Washington, Wisconsin. One night, Donner went back to his cabin after a long shift. His second mate was supposed to wake him once they were at their destination, but when the mate went to check on him a few hours later, Donner was gone, and they searched every inch of that ship, but he was never seen again. The most infamous case was on June 23rd of 1950 though. A flight piloted by Robert C. Lind was en route from New York to Minneapolis when it hit bad weather near Chicago. The plane changed course and headed over Lake Michigan. Around midnight, Lind requested to drop the altitude, but his request was denied, and that was the last communication anyone heard from Flight 2501. It vanished, and its last known position was within the Michigan Triangle. In 2006, a ghost ship was spotted drifting off the coast of Queensland, Australia. The vessel, identified as the Jian Seng, didn't show any signs of a struggle. There was a broken tow rope, but that was about it. A patrol vessel was sent in to investigate, and when they boarded this empty ship, they found it eerily quiet. There were no signs that any violent struggle had happened or anything like that. It was just an empty ship floating along, and it looked like it had been floating for a while because it was completely out of fuel. Stranger though, the origin of the ship has never been found. Nobody knows where it came from or where it was going. It hadn't been registered, and no search had ever been made for it. There was a large amount of rice on the ship though, which has led some to believe that this was a resupply vessel for fishing boats. The Devil's Sea, also known as the Dragon's Triangle, is like the Pacific Ocean's version of the Bermuda Triangle. Located off the coast of Japan, the area has become rather infamous for strange magnetic anomalies, unexplained lights, and of course, unsolved disappearances. Japanese fishing authorities even consider it a dangerous spot. One of the most chilling stories happened in 1952, when Japan sent out a research vessel to investigate the Devil's Sea. The ship and its 31-person crew disappeared without a trace. As for what's really behind it all, you have your standard theories. Aliens, portals to parallel universes. Some scientists think volcanic activity in the region could explain the disappearances, but whatever the cause, it seems like this area gets its name for a very good reason. Flight 19 was a US Navy training flight that disappeared over the Bermuda Triangle on December 5th of 1945. The flight involved 5 TBM Avenger bombers led by Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, along with 14 crew. They were on a routine training exercise. No one was expecting anything to go wrong, but it did. It began when Lieutenant Taylor's compasses started malfunctioning. After completing their tasks, Taylor and his crew got lost. Radio transmissions showed that Taylor thought he was over the Florida Keys, but his compass was giving false readings. At one point he said, "I am over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale." As the confusion continued to grow, other pilots in the group said, "Well, why don't we fly west and head back to Florida?" But Taylor insisted on continuing in the wrong direction. By the time they realized something was seriously wrong, they were far out over the Atlantic, with their fuel running low. Taylor radioed, "We are heading 030 degrees for 45 minutes, then we will fly north to make sure we are not over the Gulf of Mexico." But the weather was getting bad, and radio contact started cutting out. Taylor's last message, "All planes close up tight, we'll have to ditch unless landfall," was heard just before they vanished. While all this was happening, another aircraft was sent to search for Flight 19, but it also disappeared. Until this day, there's never been any trace of the missing planes or the crew. First up, we've got the coelacanth. This fish is seriously cool, but also a little creepy looking. What makes it so interesting is that it was thought to have been long extinct, gone for 65 million years alongside the dinosaurs, but then in 1938, fishermen off the coast of South Africa pulled one up, and boom, you had a live and kicking living dinosaur. These fish have been around for 360 million years, and honestly, you can kind of tell. They're huge, sometimes growing over 6 feet long. They have thick lobed fins that make them look, I don't know, just something really ancient looking about them. And here's something really cool. They seem to be a kind of link between sea creatures and land animals. The way their fins move is a bit like legs of amphibians, which hints that they could be a distant relative to the first creature creatures that crawled onto land. Coelacanths are still found today, mostly off the coast of Madagascar and around Indonesia, but there's no denying that they are one of the creepiest and coolest survivors from the past. The lamprey. These creatures are definitely one of the most terrifying things still swimming around today. There are lots of different types, but the one most people know about is the parasitic lamprey, which looks like a giant horrifying leech, and that's basically exactly what it is. They've been around for hundreds of millions of years, and they're as creepy as they sound. The lamprey is a parasitic species. It latches onto its victim with its circular sucker-like mouth, which is lined with rows and rows of sharp teeth, and once attached, it starts rasping away at its prey, eating its flesh to access all the red stuff inside, leaving these huge, ugly scars on their victims. Lampreys are some of the most primitive fish alive today. In fact, a lamprey fossil dating back 360 million years was found in 2006, making it a living fossil that scientists have used to study ancient evolution. The sea lamprey has earned a reputation as a pest in places like the Great Lakes in North America, where it kills many of the fish that it attaches itself to. Next on the list, we have the pygmy right whale. This is one of the rarest whales you can find on Earth today, and they've been around for about 23 million years. They've only been spotted alive and at sea a handful of times, and because there aren't a large number of specimens and DNA for the animal to pull from, there's still a lot that science doesn't know about them. Exactly what they eat and how they behave is still a bit murky. They're very small, for whales anyway, only measuring about 21 feet in length. Yeah, only, but for a whale that is pretty small. They live in the cool waters of the southern hemisphere. They're said to have formed from baleen whales millions of years ago, and as rare as they are now, things may get even worse. As oceans continue growing warmer, the population of these whales is going to drop even further. The nautilus. The nautilus is a mollusk that's lived in the sea for 500 million years, thriving during a time when the continents were still taking shape. Originally, there were 10,000 different species of this animal, but today only a few survive in the western Pacific Ocean and the coast of the Indian Ocean. Chambered nautilus, a specific type of the creature, use their 90 retractable suckerless tentacles equipped with are called chemonosensors to hunt for fish, crabs, and lobsters. The tentacles help them pick up food scents in their environment. Using a beak-like mouth, they pry open tough shells to access their prey. They also regulate the amount of water and air in their shell through an internal tube called a hyponome. These are such strange but really beautiful looking creatures. The striped markings on them, just very eye-catching. Hagfish. These are one of the most bizarre and ancient creatures still alive today. They've been around for over 300 million years, and just to put this into perspective, this means they were swimming around before dinosaurs came about. These things are often called slime eels. As for why, I'll get to that in a moment. Now, they aren't actually eels, and some scientists even question whether they should be classified as fish. One of the most fascinating things about the hagfish is its unique anatomy. They do have a skull, but they completely lack a spine. They also have 2 brains. And I don't think I've ever heard of a creature with 2 brains before. That's crazy. Hagfish spend their nights scavenging for food, feeding mostly on the carcasses of larger animals that sink to the ocean floor. They have a strong sense of smell, allowing them to locate food sources. In 2011, researchers made a pretty interesting discovery. Hagfish can actually absorb nutrients through their skin and gills. This makes them one of the only vertebrates known to have this ability. It's especially useful when food is scarce. It just increases the surface area available to absorb nutrients. But as promised, of course, we gotta get to the reason behind the slime eel nickname. Well, these things have the ability to produce this thick, sticky slime that can clog the gills of other fish, making it nearly impossible for them to be eaten. This defense mechanism is so effective that hagfish have virtually no natural enemies, making them one of the ocean's most resilient animals. The lancetfish has a very prehistoric look. They got these sharp teeth and that big sail dorsal fin on the top, and this is its scientific name, Alepisaurus ferox. If I didn't know any better, I would think that was a dinosaur. These fish can get pretty big too. Some can grow up to 2 meters or about 6'6". They can be found in nearly all oceans except for the polar regions. They're aggressive hunters, feeding on smaller fish and squid, but they've also been known to eat members of their own species when no other options are around. I'd never heard about these guys until today, but I'm really glad that I've discovered them. They may be on my list of top 10 favorite fish now. I love the way they move through the water too. The sturgeon is another ancient creature that's been around since the early Jurassic period. Now, these fish are mainly known for being the source of caviar. They're unfortunately endangered today thanks to overfishing. Now, I didn't know how big these guys can get though. Some species of sturgeon can grow over 20 feet long, making them as large as a great white. Sturgeon feed on small animals from the ocean floor, and they're generally pretty harmless to humans, but just because of how massive they are, they can pose a threat. Unintended, but still, there have been cases where sturgeons have leapt out of the water and landed on boats, causing injury or, in rare cases, even death. The sawfish. Now, this is a pretty remarkable survivor from the Cretaceous period, and they are unfortunately also critically endangered today. We can find them in both saltwater and freshwater. It's even been spotted up to 100 kilometers inland in rivers and creeks. They can get pretty huge, growing up to 7 meters or 23 feet long. They do look like strange sharks, but they're actually more closely related to rays. You can kind of tell by their belly part. They look a bit like a stingray. Also, they have a really funny mouth. Anyway, their most distinctive feature is what can only be described as a chainsaw on their snout, which is not only a weapon, but also a highly sensitive organ, covered in what are called electrosensitive pores. The sawfish can detect prey even with poor eyesight. These things are generally pretty peaceful, despite having, a chainsaw on their face, but they can get dangerous if they're provoked. Fascinating fossil discovery also revealed that prehistoric sawfish were likely food sources for the massive carnivorous dinosaur Spinosaurus. They found vertebrae from a sawfish lodged in one of their teeth. The alligator gar. It's not actually an alligator, but a massive fish from the gar family, and it's one of the largest freshwater fish in North America. Found mostly in the southern United States, they're ancient creatures that have been around for about 100 million years. They can grow up to 10 feet long and weigh over 400 pounds. With their thick armored scales and their large fang-filled mouths, they do look more like a crocodile than a fish, or an alligator than a fish. There are plenty of photos of fishermen holding up these things, and sometimes it takes 2 fully grown men to hold one. In one incident, a man dangling his feet off a dock had an alligator gar latch onto his foot and try to pull him under the water. Now, fortunately, he did manage to escape, but there's a very good chance that these fish might have done this before, and that's the reason behind several mysterious drownings. And finally, we have tadpole shrimp. Picture a prehistoric sea-dwelling creature, and something like this is probably exactly what's going to come to mind. Tadpole shrimp are ancient crustaceans that have existed for an incredibly long time, dating back to the Triassic period, around 220 million years ago. They belong to the Notostraca group and have kept a remarkably unchanged appearance throughout their history. They're kind of crazy looking. They have this really cool shield-looking carapace that covers their bodies. Now, despite their ancient origins, they've continued to thrive in the modern world. They're adept at surviving in environments with fluctuating water levels, often appearing in habitats prone to temporary drying. They have a unique survival strategy during rough conditions too. In response to drought or other not so favorable environment factors, they enter a state of dormancy, forming cysts that protect them until conditions become suitable again. This is a large part of what's helped them endure for as long as they have. What you're seeing here is a fish trying to avoid the deadly tentacles of a Portuguese man-o-war. They're really cool looking creatures, but their stings are powerful enough to kill some fish and in rare cases even humans. If their venom travels to the lymph nodes, it can cause airway blockage, shortness of breath, cardiac issues, and again in extreme cases even death. In every case though, their stings are incredibly painful. Anything that gets that guttural, almost animalistic scream out of you, that's gotta be incredibly painful. This video was posted to the channel Aqua de Leo, who'd been spearfishing with a friend when a wave pushed a Portuguese man-o-war right over his head. He went on to write in the description, "I didn't even see it, but immediately felt the tentacles on my neck and it sent me into a world of pain. As soon as I lifted my head out of the water, I felt it push up against my lips and cheeks, and the tentacles latched onto my mask and neck." He finished off with a pretty important word of advice: never dive alone. Great whites may be terrifying, but have you ever heard of the megamouth shark? Definitely sounds pretty ominous. This is some rare footage of one. Now, it may not look all that scary here, but how about this image? There we go, that's more terrifying. Just imagine if that thing was alive. These are very elusive sharks. In fact, they were only discovered in 1976. Not only can they get really big, up to 18 feet or about 5.5 meters long, but as you can probably tell, they're very odd looking and have one of the largest mouths in the animal kingdom. Huge, wide, and lined with hundreds of tiny teeth, designed for filtering plankton from the water. Now, unlike most sharks that are sleek, fast hunters, the megamouth moves slowly and feeds by swimming through the water with its open mouth, so it may not be the most threatening of sharks in practice, but they do look pretty terrifying, and I'm still sure you wouldn't want to get in one's way. A much more dangerous shark, though, is the Oceanic white-tip. There's no escaping these guys. They're found all over the ocean, including the Bermuda Triangle, but they don't go very far north or south, preferring warmer waters, and they can be very aggressive. They aren't very picky about what they eat either. They're scavenging, opportunistic feeders, and if you're ever stranded out in the middle of the ocean, you'll probably be dealing with these things if you're out there long enough. Oceanic white-tips have been responsible for tons of attacks during shipwrecks and plane crashes, especially when injured survivors are leaking out their BLOOD into the water. They just love that. It's not that they prefer humans over anything else, they just go for whatever's most vulnerable and easy to catch. So if a plane crashes or a ship sinks, the shark may not hesitate to swim in and check out the scenes, circling the area before picking off the survivors. Imagine, if you will, that you're flying over the ocean on your way to Florida or Puerto Rico, anywhere around the Bermuda Triangle. It's been a peaceful flight. In fact, you're almost nodding off as you stare down at the ocean below. But then you spot something a little strange. A shadow is looming in the water, and it's getting bigger and bigger. It starts creating ripples, which get more and more violent. People around you are starting to notice now. Passengers are even starting to audibly panic, and before you can even react, a colossal figure leaps out of the water, its enormous jaws snapping open, and to your horror, your tranquil window view is soon enveloped by this ginormous beast's gaping maw. And then that's it. You and everyone else in the plane just gone, dragged into the depths of the ocean down below. You've been what I'm gonna call Bermuda beasted. We all know what makes the Bermuda Triangle so intriguing are all the ships and planes that have gone missing while flying or sailing through it. There are tons of theories as to what could be happening, and one of them is that there's this massive undiscovered monster gobbling up boats and aircraft dubbed the Bermuda Beast. While sailing the waters of the Bermuda Triangle, you may just hear the eerie, high-pitched calls of a rare and endangered bird called the Bermuda petrel, also known as the cacao. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty adorable animal, but aside from being cute, there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with these things. First of all, these are endangered birds, so endangered that for years it was thought to actually be extinct, until it was rediscovered in 1951, nesting on a tiny remote island in the Bermuda Triangle. And then there's the cacao haunting, high-pitched calls that echo over the water. To some, they sound almost ghostly as they reverberate. Their white feathers also give them a bit of a ghost-like appearance as they soar through the air. For this reason, they're sometimes referred to as the ghost bird. Frilled sharks are what are known as living fossils. It's one of the creepiest, most ancient-looking creatures to ever lurk in the deep. These things have long, eel-like bodies and sharp, needle-like teeth arranged in rows. It's been around for millions of years, and its appearance has barely changed since the time of the dinosaurs. This is why they're known as living fossils. And when you see one, it's easy to understand why it looks like it could have been designed to haunt the darkest corners of the ocean. With its long, tooth-filled mouth, a frilled shark can grab onto prey with this eerie, snake-like motion. It's not a fast swimmer really, but it lurks in the deep and then ambushes fish and squid. Scorpion fish can be found throughout the Indo-Pacific. This is actually a family of fish containing many different species, like the stonefish and lionfish. First off, let's talk about the stonefish. This one is a real nightmare if you're walking around barefoot in the shallow water. These fish are masters of camouflage. They look like, nothing more than a rock or a pile of seaweed, blending perfectly with the ocean floor, but if you accidentally step on one, you're in trouble. The spines on its back inject potent venom that can cause excruciating pain and even paralyze you. In some cases, it can be deadly if you're not treated quickly enough. Then there's the lionfish, which is a pretty cool looking animal, terrifying in its own way though, and it's even worse if you get near it. This fish has long spiny fins that look like razor sharp daggers protruding out of their bodies. It's not really an aggressive fish, but if you get too close, again, its spines can inject a painful venom. Look how strange this creature looks when it eats. This is a goblin shark, pretty apt name. Goblin sharks have these long, flattened snouts that look, to put it bluntly, pretty ugly. The other cool thing about them though is that, as you just saw, their skin is almost translucent. But the real horror comes from its extendable jaw. The goblin shark's jaw can literally shoot forward to snatch prey like some freaky mechanical contraption, grabbing onto whatever fish or squid it's after. Pretty disturbing stuff. Now, luckily these are deep sea dwellers, typically found in waters between 200 and 1200 feet deep, so it's not something you're likely gonna bump into while snorkeling. Now, we talked about the creepy looking big fin squid at the top of the video, so seems fitting to close out with another type of squid, the giant squid. A seldom seen creature lurking in the depths of the ocean, once thought of as a mythical creature. The giant squid is one of the most incredible creatures ever discovered. It can grow up to 40 feet long, possibly even bigger, making it one of the largest invertebrates on Earth. Tentacles that could wrap around your boat like a snake, massive suction cups that could hold on to anything that gets too close. Basically, they're the real-life versions of the kraken. These creatures rarely come up to the surface though, only venturing into shallower waters occasionally, so they're not the easiest animal to study, which is why they were placed in the realm of myth and legend for such a long time. For centuries, sailors and fishermen would tell tales of sea monsters, stories of enormous tentacled beasts dragging ships under the waves, and it's very possible that at least some of these stories were based on real encounters with the giant squid. In the serene waters of Seljordsvannet in Telemark, Norway, there's a legend that has existed for over 2.5 centuries. The existence of a mysterious sea creature dubbed Selma. The legend of Selma has been passed down through the generations, a part of the folklore for locals of the area, but back in 2012, Selma took a step closer to reality when a 17-year-old named Lisbeth, while on a family trip, managed to capture what are hailed as some of the best images ever recorded of this creature. Possibly. During a family outing, Lisbeth captured a pretty good video. Gunvor Vefal, Lisbeth's mother, had her own encounter with Selma in 1995, and her mother saw it back in 1970. She never came out publicly at the time with her story though, thinking she'd just get laughed at. In the footage, you can see some sort of long object colliding gracefully beneath the surface of the water with approximately 40 to 50 distinct humps. It's a pretty solid piece of footage. What do you all think though? Misidentified animal or genuine sea serpent?
The anglerfish is truly a sight to make sore eyes. I mean, this thing is freaky, and so are its mating habits. You can quite easily differentiate the male anglerfish from the female by its size. Males tend to run quite small, generally an inch max. Females are much larger, generally measuring up to 24 inches. When a male and female anglerfish decide they would like to engage in adult activity, things get weird. The male anglerfish will actually bite the female anglerfish and and become something called a sexual parasite. Slowly, over time, the male anglerfish will actually fuse with the body of the female until only its reproductive organs remain. Said organs will then fertilize the female, and in just 3 weeks, the mom and what remains of the dad anglerfish will welcome their new babies into the world. Now before we move on, let's take one last look at this female anglerfish, and more specifically the thing coming out of her incredibly bulbous head. That thing is called a stalk, and it is tipped with a bunch of little bioluminescence which the female anglerfish will use to attract prey in the pitch black deep sea, where she resides at an average depth of around 3,000 feet.
The Skaha Lake Monster. Jim LaRoque, a resident of South Okanagan, Canada, stirred quite a buzz about 5 years back with his alleged sighting of the Ogopogo, the mythical lake monster of Okanagan Lake. LaRoque and his children were by Skaha Lake in Caledon, BC on June 1st of 2019 when he noticed a peculiar disturbance in the water. Describing the incident, he stated he heard a whooshing sound and observed ripples on the lake. His son, who is on a paddleboard nearby, reportedly saw a flipper emerge from the water. LaRoque managed to capture footage of what he claimed to be this massive serpentine creature. The footage was so shocking it even showed up on the news. Canadian news, to be fair, not much goes on up here. He estimated it to be about 120 feet long, with 7 fins moving in sync, resembling oars of an upside-down dragon boat. The Ogopogo legend itself has deep roots dating back to the 1700s, with First Nations people sharing tales of this mysterious water creature lurking in the waters of Lake Okanagan.
Alright, this thing looks straight up like it just walked straight out of your nightmare. It's called the Magnapina squid, and it was first recorded by a camera attached to an oil rig in Texas. This is an incredibly elusive animal, and so catching one on film is a major accomplishment. While these squids aren't as big as giant squids, they are incredibly long, with some growing to be more than 20 feet in length. The largest one discovered to date was 21 feet long, but since we have only ever seen a handful of these guys, it's entirely possible that there are some Magnapinas out there 2 or 3 times that size, which really would make them the longest squid in the world. Although, as I said, this guy has only ever been spotted a handful of times before, the fact that it was once spotted at a depth of 20,381 feet makes it the deepest occurring squid genus known to man. And while we don't know exactly what this animal's long appendages are used for, scientists assume they act kind of like fishing lures, grabbing any edible organisms they can while they drag them along the sea floor at a depth that would literally crush you or I. Fascinating.
Coelacanths are incredibly fascinating creatures because they're actually prehistoric animals still swimming around in the ocean to this day. As cool as they are though, they're also kind of creepy looking. They kind of have like zombie looking eyes. What's crazy about them too is that they were actually thought to have gone extinct along with the dinosaurs, but in 1938 they were rediscovered and found to still exist. An animal that was believed to have died out about 65 million years before was actually still around. Pretty cool. These fish are believed to have inhabited the earth for 360 million years, and it shows. They're pretty big, growing sometimes over 6 feet in length. They also seem to be a bit of a missing link between the creatures of the sea and land-dwelling amphibians, because a coelacanth's 4 fins move in a way that almost resembles fore and hind legs.
The fangtooth fish is generally found at a depth of about 16,404 feet, which has earned it the distinction of deepest fish known to man, and its appearance might just earn it the distinction of most disturbing. But hey, to each their own, right? Although it generally resides in some of the deepest depths known to man or fish, the fangtooth has been seen at depths of just 6.5 thousand feet, which is where it was first discovered by scientists. Out of the few fangtooths spotted just far, 6.6 to 7 inches seems to be a pretty standard body size, but again, we've only seen a handful, so they could be way larger than previously assumed, which is a very scary thought. Now, in case you haven't noticed, this thing has massive teeth. In fact, it has the largest teeth to body ratio of any known fish, to the point where the fangtooth is actually physically incapable of shutting its own mouth. In other words, it's a yappa. If you're Gen Z, you get that reference. It's also incredibly fast, with a bite that appears to be way worse than its bark. It's been observed lunging at its prey prey of shrimp, fish, and squid at incredible speeds and impaling them on its razor-sharp teeth, chopping them up and swallowing them down in less than a few seconds. Good day to be me, bad day to be a shrimp.
The Humboldt squid has a few nicknames: the jumbo squid, jumbo flying squid. In Peru, they're called pota. They're big and not the friendliest. Pretty freaky squids. For starters, these things have barbed tentacle suckers. Even if you don't know what barbed tentacle suckers are, you just get this sense that they're not good. This is a large predatory squid found in the eastern Pacific Ocean. They have long, powerful tentacles equipped with suckers, each lined with sharp, barbed teeth. The beak of the Humboldt squid is also sharp, allowing them to tear into the flesh of their prey. So they're pretty intimidating as is, but even worse, they travel in large packs. And when I say large, I'm not talking about like 10. These packs can consist of thousands, and they're very coordinated, so they can overwhelm larger prey pretty easily. And just like any nightmarish creature, they only come out at night. At least that's when we're most likely to encounter them. They come closer to the surface at night to feed. During the day, they're found much deeper down. So, moral of the story, don't go swimming around in the eastern Pacific Ocean at night, or you might be swarmed by thousands of barbed tentacled jumbo flying squids.
Residing at a depth of about 1,640 feet, we have the frilled shark, which is, like the coelacanth, considered to be a living fossil due to the fact that its origins date all the way back to the Carboniferous period, which took place between 359 to 299 million years ago. The frill shark is named after its gills, of which it has 6, which each boast a distinctive frilly margin that kind of looks like a decorative trim. But that's not the only thing that sets this deep sea dweller apart from the others. You see, while most sharks have two completely separate sets of symmetrical gills on either side of their body, the frilled shark's frontmost gills actually connect underneath its throat. Some other things you might just find interesting about this animal are that, just like the great white shark, this frill shark has 25 rows of razor-sharp, backwards-facing teeth on both its upper and lower jaws. Unlike the great white shark, the frill shark attacks like a snake by lunging at its prey. This gray aquatic dinosaur also has a gestation period of up to 3.5 years. 3.5 years. Seriously, thank God I'm not a frill shark.
Now, we can't do a list like this without mentioning the giant squid. I mean, giant squids are some of the largest invertebrates on Earth. Adults can reach lengths of up to 43 feet, at least from what we've seen. There's still a lot of mystery to these things, and some researchers say they could grow even bigger than that. They live in the deep ocean at depths of 3,000 to 6,500 feet. They're very elusive and live so deep down they're very rarely seen. Giant squids have the largest eyes of any known animal, measuring up to 10 inches in diameter. Their eyes allow them to detect faint traces of bioluminescent light in the deep sea. They have long tentacles equipped with suckers lined with sharp teeth. The 2 long feeding tentacles, along with the 8 shorter arms, help them capture and consume their prey. These things aren't just scary in terms of size either, they're also carnivorous, hunting fish and even other squid species. They've even been known to eat small sharks. What's so amazing about these creatures is that for centuries they were only talked about in stories told by fishermen or sailors. They were treated like any other mythical creature. It isn't until fairly recently that one of these things were actually captured on camera. Because of where they live and how hard they are to catch, studying giant squids is a tough task. Most of our knowledge about them comes from specimens that have washed ashore or from examining stomach contents from creatures that have eaten them. Sperm whales. That's basically the only animal big enough to mess with these things.
And of course, we have to include the goblin shark, a truly unsettling specimen with a protruding mouth that extends outwards to catch its prey. The goblin shark was discovered by scientist David Starr Jordan in 1098, however the species itself is actually believed to be around 125 million years old. The animal boasts 26 long, thin, spiky teeth on their upper jaw and 24 on their lower jaw. The more I learn about this thing, the more I want to stay as far away from it as possible. Lucky for me, this goblin shark is generally seen at depths of 4,265 feet, but unluckily for me, it enjoys late night swims incredibly close to the surface of the water, which I will be keeping in mind the next time I want to take a late night dip in the heart of the Pacific, Atlantic, or Indian Ocean.
So this is a very strange video. Supposedly it comes out of Kenya, but I've heard it coming from other parts of Africa too, so I'm not 100% certain. In the video we clearly see what looks to be a young mermaid-like being washed up on a beach surrounded by onlookers. It's clear that the supposed mermaid is actually on camera. I mean, this is a real person. The question is whether they're a real mermaid or just a person with a fish attached to their lower half. And yeah, that's almost definitely the case, but what creeps me out about this video is why it exists. I just have so many questions about this thing. There's just something very uncomfortable about this footage. Why was this created? Who is the person they've attached to this fish? Are they okay? And just what the hell is the music the uploader has added to the footage? It doesn't fit at all, and it just makes the whole thing even more strange and unsettling. During World War II, strange sightings were reported in the key islands of Indonesia, where Japanese soldiers stationed there encountered what they described as mermaids, or mermaid-like creatures. Local villagers familiar with these creatures called them orang ikan, or manfish, and they were said to stand at just under 5 feet tall, with pink salmon-colored skin, spikes along their spine and neck, and a mouth resembling that of a carp. Instead of a fishtail, they had long arms and frog-like legs, both ending in talons. So they're basically the creature from the Black Lagoon. The soldiers claimed to have spotted the creatures both in and out of the water. One story came from a troop exploring a lagoon who saw one of the things leap onto a rock, facing the soldiers and making a gurgling, burping noise. As another creature swam swiftly towards them, the soldiers fired shots at the rocks and water, but the creatures vanished before their eyes. Later, Sergeant Tero Horiba asked villagers to notify him if one of the creatures was ever captured. Eventually, the village chief presented a lifeless specimen to him. Creature about 4'9" tall, apparently matched the description perfectly. These photos are pretty famous in the world of deep-sea cryptids. They were taken by a man named Jeff Leitcher in 1998. He was a diver who claimed to have captured the first documented proof that mermaids exist. It all happened about 20 minutes off the coast of Kauai when Leitcher was diving with a group. While swimming with a pod of dolphins, he noticed what appeared to be a woman swimming alongside them. What caught his attention was that she was keeping up with the dolphins. Then the woman suddenly leapt out of the water, and Leitcher realized she had the lower half of a fish. The woman jumped twice before disappearing in the water, leaving the group completely stunned. Then, about an hour later, while Leitcher was photographing some underwater life, the same mermaid-like creature supposedly brushed up against him as she swam by. He quickly snapped a few pictures just as she turned around. I feel very lucky that I'm the one to finally prove to the world what people here have known for half a century. The Kauai Point mermaid is real, Leitcher said. In 2009, something strange started happening near Kiryat Yam, Israel. Dozens of locals claimed to see a mermaid off the shore at sunset. Over time, more and more people reported spotting the creature, describing it as resembling a young woman who would frequently visit the beach and perform tricks in the water. As the sightings gained more and more attention, the Israeli government even got involved, and they offered a $1 million reward for anyone who could provide proof of the mermaid's existence. No need to capture it, just an authentic photo would do. NBC sent a film crew to investigate. They stationed themselves at Kiryat Yam Beach, both above and below the water, filming around the clock. And one night they claimed to have spotted a human figure dipping into the water before disappearing. The research crew did their best to track the mermaid down, but they couldn't pinpoint its exact location. The footage was sent to Coastal Oceans Research in Los Angeles for further analysis. Michael Schacht, the center's director, reviewed the footage and said although it was impossible to unequivocally determine the figure in the footage, it still remains a viable option. In other words, it could be the real deal, but it's not definitively proven. In 2012, Zimbabwe found itself caught up in a very strange case involving mermaids that had workers fleeing from their dam sites in the country. Water Resources Minister Sam Sipepa Nkomo addressed the issue during a Senate committee meeting, revealing that mermaids had been scaring away government workers at dam sites, or that's what workers had been saying. According to Nkomo, the workers were so terrified by these supposed creatures that they abandoned their posts, refusing to return. Nkomo shared that traditional chiefs had been called in to, quote, perform rituals to exorcise the mermaids believed to inhabit reservoirs. The mermaids, often described as female creatures with fishtails, were said to frighten the workers by allegedly pulling people under the water. In response to the workers' fears, Nkomo had even attempted to hire white personnel, assuming that they wouldn't be familiar with the mermaid legends, but they too then started reporting strange sightings and would refuse to work on the project. Now, there was skepticism from some, obviously, including Minister Nkomo, who thought that maybe the strange cases could have been caused by hazardous water currents, but the government decided to carry out the traditional rites to calm the fears of the local workers anyway. This footage comes from Marginal Media on YouTube, who explained that he'd captured the footage while diving in the Great Barrier Reef. He'd been testing out an underwater camera when he spotted the creature, only he didn't realize what he'd filmed until later when reviewing the footage on his laptop. At the time, he'd been too busy futzing with the camera, but felt something coming from behind him. He managed to shoot it, but at the time, while underwater with, low visibility like this, he figured what he'd seen was just a normal fish. Now, he was adamant that what he'd filmed was not from a movie or anything like that, and that he hadn't filmed it in a controlled environment like a swimming pool. He says it's 100% genuine, so believe him or not. In 1809, a woman named Miss McKay from the town of Thurso in Scotland claimed to have witnessed a real mermaid while walking along the beach. According to her account, in the Kentish Gazette newspaper, she had an up-close view of the creature and described it in great detail, saying, "The face seemed plump and round, the eyes and nose were small, and the former were of light grey color, and the mouth was large, and from the shape of the jawbone, which seemed straight, the face looked short." She also said that the mermaid's forehead, nose, and chin were white, but the side of the face was a bright pink. The mermaid's hair, which Miss McKay described as thick and long, with a, quote, grey, oily cast, appeared to be a challenge for the creature as the waves often threw it over its face. She said the creature seemed bothered by this, frequently using both its hands to push the hair back and rub its throat, almost as if trying to remove any dirt from the water. On June 4, 1857, two Scottish sailors, John Williamson and John Cameron, reported spotting a strange creature off the coast of Britain. While at sea, they saw a creature in the water that they described as resembling a woman. According to their account, "We distinctly saw an object about 6 yards distant from us in the shape of a woman, with full breast, dark complexion, comely face, and fine hair hanging in ringlets over the neck and shoulders." It sounds like these guys were out of the water a little too long with nothing but each other. Anyway, they described the creature as being submerged up to its middle, with its head above the water, gazing at them and even shaking its head, going on to write, "The weather being fine, we had a full view of it, and that for 3 or 4 minutes." And finally, in 1967, near Main Islands in British Columbia, something strange happened. A ferry filled with tourists spotted a blonde-haired mermaid-like creature sitting on the beach, eating a fish. One witness even described her as attractive with dimples. To top it off, a photo was taken showing a woman with blonde hair and the lower half of a porpoise. Later that week, another mermaid sighting apparently occurred, but by then, skepticism was growing and a lot of people understandably started dismissing the sightings as hoaxes. Charles White, owner of the Undersea Gardens, a ship doubling as an underwater aquarium, offered a $25,000 reward for the mermaid's capture. He even promised room and board, plus special combs for the mermaid's comfort. So quite an odd offer, but he was desperate to prove that she was real. Unfortunately, after a few weeks, the story lost steam and the mermaid sightings faded into local legend. What you're looking at here is a newly discovered creature. Again, news about this one just came out the other day. In the Monterey Canyon off California, marine biologist Bruce Robison made a discovery back in 2000. While exploring with robotic vehicles, he came across a strange gelatinous blob with a giant hood, finger-like projections, and colorful internal organs. Fast forward nearly 25 years, and Robison, along with colleague Stephen Haddock, which is a great name for someone who studies fish, they have finally solved the mystery. They've identified this bizarre creature as a brand new type of nudibranch, or sea slug. Now, unlike other sea slugs that crawl along the ocean floor though, this one floats. Looks a lot more like a jellyfish. Even more astonishing, this new nudibranch can jet backward by expelling water from its hood. The hood, as it turns out, is like a Venus flytrap, capable of expanding and contracting to trap its prey. The creature is also bioluminescent and has both male and female reproductive organs. A pretty fascinating little creature. These are recently discovered octopus species. Roughly 2 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean near Costa Rica, scientists found 4 brand new species of octopus during expeditions in June and December of last year. It all started when researchers spotted pink octopus hatchlings coming out from their eggs at a place known as El Dorado Hill. Jorge Cortez Nunez, a researcher from the University of Costa Rica, said it was unexpected to find so many species of octopus in a small area, first, and second, at 3,000 meters depth. In June, researchers using a remotely operated vehicle named Sebastian found 2 octopus nurseries around hydrothermal springs on the sea floor. They discovered that these octopuses seemed to prefer the warm waters from the vents, which helps shorten their long incubation period. The warm water gives the eggs a better chance of surviving in the cold, dark depths. One of the new species was even given an unofficial nickname, the Dorado octopus, after the spot where it was found. The species has short arms and small eyes, similar to the pearl octopus found off California. The other species had bigger eyes and longer arms. The 4th species is especially mysterious, with bumpy pale skin and a strange row of suckers on each arm. In total, about 310 deep-sea octopus specimens were collected. What you're looking at here is a recently discovered species of fish in China. You'll notice that it doesn't have eyes. They kind of look like raw chicken cutlets or something else that I can't really describe on here. And those dark patches that you see, those are its internal organs. Deep in an underground river in southern China, scientists found these blind pink fish with no eyes. They were swimming in the dark depths of a cave system in Guangxi when researchers first encountered them during surveys between 2019 and 2024. They were on the hunt for Chinese karst loaches, but quickly realized that this fish didn't match any known species. After studying it, the team confirmed that they had discovered a new species. This is the overly complicated scientific name on screen now, so I'll use the nickname Dachshund Chinese karst loach. These tiny fish are only about an inch long and have elongated bodies with no scales. They also have wide heads, narrow mouths, and whisker-like thingies on their heads, but again, no eyes. Researchers believe this species, like others in the area, lives in deep caves with underground rivers and is rarely seen by people. In November of last year, anglers off the coast of Pakistan reeled in a strange catch, a quote, torpedo-shaped predator with teeth on its tongue. At first they thought it was a regular fish, but researchers Sherkan Panwara and Imtiaz Kashani soon realized they'd actually found something new. After examining these fish in the lab, they discovered not one, but 2 new species. The first was Brachycentron blotchy, or the blotchy cobia. These predators are about 3 feet long, weigh around 8 pounds, and have small eyes, pointed snouts, and tiny teeth on their jaws, the roof of their mouths, and yes, even their tongues. Inside their stomachs, they found a mix of small fish, crustaceans, and cephalopods. Second species, Brachycentron marquiensis, or the macron cobia, is smaller, about 2.5 feet long, and weighs about 6 pounds. It has a short, pointed head, small teeth, and a greenish coloring with a gray band running along its side. Its stomach contained mostly digested material and some crab parts. How's this for an animal name? The night-armored catfish. Pretty cool, but does it live up to its name? Well, this is one right here. Divers in northern Brazil were exploring the Xingju River, hoping to find some Asaku preto, a thorny black fish often sold in the aquarium trade. Well, it turns out these fish hadn't been documented by science yet. After teaming up with local fishermen and digging through museum collections, scientists realized that this was a brand new species which they named Pseudacanthicus nictos, or the night-armored catfish. These fish can grow up to 10 inches long and have completely black eyes, forked teeth, and their bodies are covered in armor-like plates and thorny spikes. Living in the murky depths of the river, they're usually found around submerged logs, sometimes as deep as 65 feet. As you could probably tell, they're carnivores, feeding on small aquatic animals. They're also very territorial. The males can get very aggressive, especially when sharing space with other males. Off the coast of Belize, anglers unknowingly caught a new species of shark between 2016 and 2019. First they thought they'd just landed another hammerhead, but something about the shark's unique shovel-shaped heads made scientists take a closer look. And after analyzing the shark's body shape, skeleton, and DNA, researchers realized these were part of a completely new species, the shovelbill shark. These small sharks, measuring up to 3 feet 4 inches long, have these very unique, flat, shovel-looking heads. They're found in coastal waters, estuaries, coral reefs, and seagrass beds from Belize all the way to Brazil. They're often caught by anglers, and experts warn that they may already be highly threatened. As co-author of the study, Demian Chapman said, "It is tragic that we have only just recognized that this species exists, and we are already running against the clock to prevent its extinction." Yeah, that is very sad, especially because these sharks are kind of cute, you know? Off the coast of Saudi Arabia, researchers exploring coral reefs discovered this tiny, really upset-looking fish, and honestly, I think if I looked like this, I would also be in a pretty bad mood all the time. While diving in the Red Sea, they released clove oil into an underwater cave to sedate the fish inside, and a small dark red goby floated to the surface. At first, they weren't sure what species it was, and after several sightings and a few more catches, they figured out why. This was not a species they'd ever seen before. This little fish, only about half an inch long, had a severely curved mouth that gave it this sort of grumpy look. Researchers named it the grumpy dwarf goby because of this permanently unhappy looking facial expression. The fish is incredibly rare, with only 10 specimens found during extensive collections along the Saudi Arabian coast, said the researchers. They live in small caves, rocky overhangs, or crevices about 32 to 100 feet below the surface. Again, in the caves of southern China, researchers discovered a fish which they'd named Liu's cave loach, a new species swimming through heavily polluted water. The creatures caught the attention of scientists visiting the area in 2023. Spelled out for you here is their scientific name, but again, they're also called Liu's cave loach for short. They can grow up to 2.5 inches long. They have elongated bodies covered in tiny scales with bright yellow fins. Their snouts are lined with whiskers, almost like catfish, and their eyes have a yellowish hue. They live in underground rivers and cave pools, but don't show the usual traits of cave-dwelling species. They were also found breeding in a cave pond, despite the water being heavily polluted from nearby sugar factories and duck farms. So far, Liu's cave loaches have only been found in the caves of Yifeng District, Guangxi, a province in southern China near the Vietnam border. Deep beneath the surface of the ocean, researchers have discovered 3 brand new species of sea stars living in some of the most remote and bizarre environments on Earth. The sea stars were found thousands of feet below the surface at methane seeps in underwater valleys using remote-controlled vehicles during surveys between 2003 and 2018. One of the new species showing up on screen in text right now because I don't have a week to learn how to pronounce that. Anyway, it was discovered off the coast of Costa Rica about 3,200 feet down. With flower-like patterns, small plates on its back, these creatures move along the seafloor using tube feet that extend down each arm. Another species, Chimonostella davidalani, also found in Costa Rica, looks similar but has thorny, elongated spines along the edge of its body. The third species, Chimonostella lorisae, has short spines covered in thick skin, and interestingly, all mature specimens looked identical. These deep sea stars seem to live around stuff that sinks to the bottom of the ocean, like sunken wood, which gives them shelter and food. And researchers still aren't sure if the sea stars eat only the wood or if they have other food sources down there. Well, this thing looks creepy. Earlier this year, a team of researchers from China set out on an expedition to the northwestern Pacific Ocean to explore the depths around the Caroline Plate, an area off the coast of the Philippines. They weren't diving themselves, but instead used an underwater robot to explore the area and collect tiny creatures from the ocean floor. And when the robot pulled up a sample from a seamount, among the tiny critters they found was a pregnant amphipod, a type of shrimp-like creature that's just a few millimeters long. But this wasn't like any amphipod they'd ever seen. This was a brand new species, now been dubbed Esoris carolinus. It's an interesting but again very creepy looking creature Good thing it's so small. The eyes in particular were noted as being large and very well pigmented, which helped it stand out among the other species that live in these deep waters. And here's the really interesting part. When the researchers looked inside its body, they found 9 baby amphipods growing inside her. This footage here was captured in 2015, a never-before-seen species of squid. So a group of researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, Geomer Helmholtz Center for Ocean Research Kiel, and the University of South Florida teamed up for an expedition in the Gulf of California off Mexico's west coast. Using a remotely operated vehicle, the team was able to dive as deep as 8,000 feet without ever leaving the surface and without disturbing the creature's environment. The team managed to capture a large squid on camera, but soon they noticed something strange about this one. The squid was carrying dozens of giant eggs, around 30 to 40 of them, each about half an inch across. Now, squids of the species they thought this mother was, called gonatids, usually carry eggs that are only about a fifth of an inch in diameter, so these were much bigger. They'd never seen eggs this large in any gonatid squid before, and there's no other squid known to carry eggs of this size. So the researchers figured there was a very good chance they discovered a brand new species altogether. Pictured here is a brand new species of fish found in Africa. Earlier this year in Zambia, a strange creature was spotted swimming through a river, heading straight for a bridge. Scientists pulled the creature from the water, at first having no idea what they just found, while it turned out they discovered a brand new species. The team had been in the middle of a project studying a group of fish called nanocharax, more commonly known as darters. They were looking at preserved specimens collected from rivers in South Africa when something odd started to stand out. The fish from a few specific rivers, mostly caught in 2005, had a distinct pattern that was different from the usual darters they were used to. These fish had a unique scale pattern and a banded coloring that immediately caught the researchers' attention. And after further investigation, they realized that they'd uncovered a completely new species dubbed Nanocharax skeltoni, or Skelton's darter fish. They decided to name the species after Paul Harvey Skelton, a renowned professor at the South African Institute for Aquatic Biodiversity. A study came out this past April about a brand new species of jellyfish discovered off the coast of Florida, pictured here. Peter Schuchert and Richard Collins carried out 91 nighttime scuba dives near Palm Beach over the course of years, and they found some pretty cool stuff, like, just some never before seen jellyfish, for example. After photographing the creatures and capturing 2 of them, they took a closer look and realized they'd found a new species which was soon dubbed Zancleopsis grandis, or the large Zancleopsis jellyfish. These things are just over an inch tall with tentacles stretching more than 2 inches in length. The body itself has a long, narrow shape that shifts as the jellyfish moves through the water. The researchers named it grandis because of the relatively large size and the big bulbs on its tentacles. And just like other jellyfish, Zancleopsis grandis uses jet propulsion to move. It sucks in water and then squirts it back out through a small opening, propelling itself forward through the water. Kinda crazy that these new things were found in Florida. As Collins put it, part of the work we are doing is to demonstrate and document the amazing oceanic biodiversity here in Florida. Florida waters are well studied relative to most of the world's oceans, and yet there is still so much to learn and discover. And yeah, that is crazy because Florida, right? And then you got all this vast water over so much of the earth. Like, who knows what crazy stuff could be out there. Now, this is the first and only piece of footage ever captured of a living genus of squid called this. Just earlier this year, the Schmidt Ocean Institute led a team of oceanographers on an expedition to some of the remotest parts of the southeastern Pacific Ocean. During their month-long mission, they came across 20 never-before-seen species and another 80 that were observed in this part of the ocean for the first time. These squids have only ever been seen on the surface, i.e. they've been brought up in nets, dead. We've never seen one alive swimming around in its natural habitat, so this was pretty amazing to see. And there haven't even been that many specimens of these creatures either. It's such a rare genus that we've only had like a few specimens, and a lot of them came from the late 1800s. Sea cucumbers don't really sound all that scary, but I mean, just look at this one. This is what's called a brown-ringed sea cucumber, and it was just discovered. Scientists on a submarine were exploring the South China Sea when they spotted this small, reddish sea creature. It didn't quite look like anything they'd seen before, and as it turns out, it wasn't anything they'd seen before. It was found during a series of dives between 2018 and 2023, using a manned submersible. When the team surfaced and had a chance to study the creature, which had something like 20 tentacles and over 70 tube feet, they realized that they'd uncovered a new animal and gave it this crazy name that, again, I can't even begin to pronounce. AKA the brown-ringed sea cucumber, though. This new species of sea cucumber can grow to about 8 inches long and around 2 inches wide, and this wasn't all they found either. Yanlu Zhao and Haibin Zhang, part of the research team, also discovered 2 more new species of sea cucumber on the same expedition. Next up, we have another story that came out this past April about a new creature discovered off the southern tip of China. Just what is this thing? An ancient wood carving? Well, no, it's actually the shell of a living animal. A research team from China was exploring a deep sea area called the Haima Cold Seep off the coast of Hainan Island when their underwater robot picked up something from the sea floor. It was a shell, and at first the researchers didn't really think much of it, but once they took a closer look, they were like, well, actually, what exactly is this thing? The shell belonged to a type of mollusk known for living in extreme environments, like cold seeps. These are special areas on the seafloor where chemicals like methane and hydrogen sulfide leak up from the Earth's crust, creating this chemically rich water that only very specific life forms can survive in. This weird shell was just over 4 inches long and had a, quote, robust and rectangular shape. The mollusk's foot, the part that sticks out from the shell when it wants to move around, was described as large with an oval sole. But it was really the shape of the shell that made this thing so unique. It's the fact that it's rectangular. Other species' shells are usually curved inward on the ends. Just look at how gorgeous this snail is. On the coastlines of Japan, a tiny new species of sea creature has been found. Hiroshi Fukuda, a researcher and associate professor at Okayama University, first came across these rare snails over 30 years ago when he was still a student. They were actually relatively well known in Japan, but had never been formally documented until last year. Fukuda studied dozens of these snails and ended up naming them this. And luckily, it has a much easier to pronounce nickname, the strange dwarf snail. These snails are tiny, measuring less than 1/10 of an inch long, and Fukuda described these snails as bizarre. These things are small, but they move around quickly, crawling in step-like movements. Fukuda wrote in his paper that they're usually found crawling on muddy walls of earthworm and crab burrows, which might be why they were overlooked for such a long time. This strange-looking animal was discovered in an underwater cave. A team of researchers recently discovered a brand new species of hermit crab in a dark underwater cave in Japan, about 100 feet from the entrance. The 3-person team found this tiny critter in just about 3 feet of water. After carefully examining the male specimen, they realized they had come across a new species. This is its name, also called this. Not even the alternate name is easy to say. This new species is incredibly small though, measuring less than 1 centimeter long. Aw, that's cute. What really set it apart from other hermit crabs were its claws. They were described as strongly unequal and dissimilar. The right claw is moderately slender, the left claw is much smaller, only about half the size of the right one. And this last thing looks like it just hurts. There's like little spines and spikes on it. In March of 2021, researchers took a deep dive into the South China Sea using a manned submersible. During one of their dives, they came across a large crab sitting on some coral. They captured the creature and brought it back to study. Until then, this was a never-before documented species, which was later dubbed Gordonopsis mazupo. Finally, a scientific name that I can actually get my lips around. But they're also known as Mazu's porter crab. This new species is considered pretty big for a crab. Its body is about 1.2 inches long, with legs stretching more than 3.5 inches. When you include its legs, the crab measures over 8 inches across in total. Its claws are especially interesting, described as blade-like. The researchers named it Gordonopsis mazupo after Mazu, the Chinese goddess or grandmother of the sea. And so far, only one of these things has ever been found. The blue-ringed octopus is one of the most fascinating but terrifying creatures in the ocean. There are 4 known species of these octopuses, and they all share one thing in common. They are highly venomous and can kill a human in just a matter of minutes. The venom they carry contains tetrodotoxin, a neurotoxin that is 1,000 times more potent than cyanide. Even more frightening is that there's no anti-venom to counteract the effects, making a bite from this octopus potentially fatal. Tetrodotoxin is spread throughout the octopus's body, not just in its venom glands, which is what makes these creatures both poisonous and venomous. The blue-ringed octopus is typically found in tropical and subtropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. They get their name from those bright blue rings on their bodies, which only appear when the octopus feels threatened or is about to unleash its deadly venom. What's especially terrifying about this species is that their bites are often painless, so you might not even know you've been bitten, but the venom works quickly, paralyzing the body and often leading to respiratory failure. The effects can be rapid, with death occurring anywhere from 24 hours to just 20 minutes after the toxin enters the body. Cone snails are fascinating creatures, and while over 1,000 species exist, there's one species in particular that you just don't want to get near: the geography cone snail. These mollusks are predatory, using specialized venom-filled teeth to paralyze their prey, which is usually small fish, invertebrates, or other snails. The geography cone snail is dangerous though. It can grow up to 6 inches or 15 centimeters long, and its venom contains more than 10,000 active compounds, which are powerful enough to paralyze and even kill humans. A sting from a geography cone snail can cause respiratory paralysis and death if not treated immediately. The venom attacks the nervous system and can lead to suffocation. Over the past 30 years, about 15 people have died from geography cone snails. These stings are stealthy and fast too. Their harpoon-like teeth strike so quickly that most people don't even realize they've been stung until it's too late. When it comes to marine creatures with the potential to kill, few are as feared as the box jellyfish. These creatures are famous for their venom, which can cause paralysis, heart failure, and even death within minutes. Box jellyfish are especially dangerous in regions like northern Australia and Southeast Asia, where they're found in large numbers. The Australian box jellyfish has tentacles that can reach up to 10 feet or 3 meters long, and their bodies can grow up to 12 inches or 30 centimeters in diameter. Just one sting can inject a massive amount of venom into a victim's body. It can paralyze a person almost instantly, and if enough venom is delivered, it can lead to heart failure. There are over 50 known species of box jellyfish, but another, one of the most feared, is the irukandji jellyfish. These ones are much smaller, under an inch, but that's kind of what makes them so scary. Their venom is potent and can cause what's called irukandji syndrome, symptoms of which are intense pain, muscle cramping, high heart rate, and BLOOD pressure, along with fluid in the lungs. It can cause life-threatening heart complications. In Australia alone, between 50 and 100 people are hospitalized each year with irukandji syndrome, and the number of box jellyfish-related deaths, though hard to track, may be much higher than reported. The beaked sea snake is another terrifying sea creature found off the coasts of India, Australia, Africa, and the Arabian Sea. This species is considered one of the most venomous sea snakes in the world. It's part of a group of 64 species of sea snake, but the beaked sea snake stands out for its aggressive nature and incredibly potent venom. This snake's venom is so powerful that it's 8 times more toxic than that of a cobra. A mere 1.5 milligrams of its venom can kill a human. A full dose can kill up to 22. The venom contains a strong neurotoxin that causes paralysis, including paralysis of the diaphragm, which can lead to respiratory failure. Though bites from sea snakes are rare, researchers are especially wary of the beaked sea snake because it is known to be more aggressive. Most sea snake bites happen when fishers try to disentangle them from their nets. Stonefish are some of the most well-camouflaged creatures in the ocean, making them fascinating but terrifying. These fish blend in so perfectly with their surroundings, whether it's rock, coral, or the seabed, it's almost impossible to spot them. And that's precisely what makes them so dangerous. They remain perfectly still, waiting for prey to pass by, and when the moment comes, they strike, ambushing and swallowing their prey whole. But it's not just their hunting skills that makes a stonefish so terrifying. The venom in their dorsal spines is released when the fish is disturbed. If you happen to step on one, well, let's just say you'll probably regret it. Stonefish stings are said to be excruciatingly painful and cause intense swelling in the affected limb within minutes. If the sting isn't treated, it can lead to necrosis and in some cases even death. Luckily, fatalities are rare, and immediate treatments like heat immersion, which helps to neutralize the venom, and anti-venom can help save lives. But no wonder scientists are more hesitant to study these creatures in the wild, given the risk of encountering one while out in the ocean. The pufferfish or blowfish is another sea creature with a deadly surprise. When threatened, the fish inflates itself, making it much harder for predators to swallow. Some pufferfish species even have spikes that protrude when inflated, but what makes the pufferfish so dangerous isn't the inflated body or the spines, it's the potent neurotoxin they carry inside their bodies. Tetrodotoxin is at least 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide. The toxin is concentrated in the fish's internal organs and skin, and even a small amount can be deadly. In fact, just one pufferfish can kill up to 30 adult humans. The fish's toxicity makes it highly unappealing to most predators, but in Japan, it's actually considered a delicacy. Fugu is a dish that's carefully prepared by licensed chefs who are trained to remove the toxic parts of the fish, but mistakes can happen, and when they do, the results can be fatal. Before Japan's licensing system, there were numerous deaths every year from improperly prepared fugu. Thanks to the licensing system, though, fatalities have gone down, but there's still the occasional case of food poisoning, often when people try to catch and prepare pufferfish on their own. The Titan triggerfish. Marine biologist Selena McMillan described being chased by one of these things, saying it was one of the scariest moments of her career. The Titan triggerfish is a large, colorful species of triggerfish found in coral reefs of the Indo-Pacific. These fish are known for their powerful jaws and large, sharp teeth, which are well suited for crushing hard-shelled prey like crustaceans and sea urchins. Triggerfish's teeth are unique because they're straight but incredibly thin, which makes them razor sharp. Despite their delicate appearance, they're surprisingly strong and resistant to damage. These fish are highly territorial, especially during their breeding season. They create and fiercely defend nesting sites on the ocean floor. Divers and snorkelers who may venture too close to these nesting areas may provoke an aggressive response from the triggerfish. They've been known to attack intruders, including humans, to protect their nests. They can also reach over 2 feet or 60 centimeters in length and are found in pretty shallow waters. Viperfish live in the deep, dark waters of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, usually between 200 and 5,000 feet below the surface. They're not big, but they're definitely fierce. And what makes them terrifying, aside from how damn ugly they are, is the glow they emit from their body. This bioluminescent light is like a built-in lure to attract other fish, tricking them into getting close enough for the viperfish to snap its jaws shut on them. Even though it's not massive, the viperfish is a brutal predator, and scientists are fascinated by these things, but a little scared of studying it because it lives in some of the most extreme depths, and getting close enough to study it also means diving into some pretty dangerous waters. Next up, we have the Oceanic white-tipped shark. These sharks are adapted to life in the open ocean and are often found far from shore, making encounters with humans pretty rare, and that's probably for the best. In terms of behavior, the Oceanic white-tipped shark has a reputation of being aggressive, especially in situations where it associates humans with potential food sources. And because they live out in the middle of the ocean, they take whatever food they can get. They're opportunistic hunters. To make matters worse, these sharks are very unpredictable. They can switch from seemingly calm or indifferent to aggressive at the drop of a hat. The frilled shark looks like it came straight from the age of the dinosaurs. Often called a living fossil, this creature is an ancient species that's been around for over 150 million years. It has a long eel-like body with a head that almost looks like a snake, and its mouth is packed with all these sharp, backward-facing teeth. The frilled shark can grow up to 6.5 feet long, but the most terrifying thing about it is its feeding style. It's able to lunge forward and swallow prey whole using its long, needle-like teeth to trap it. It hangs out in deep waters, often between 200 and 500 feet below the surface. Scientists rarely get a chance to study them up close. The deep, dark waters they live in are hard to reach, and any research that involves these sharks comes with serious risks. Getting a good look at a frilled shark in its natural habitat is a dangerous undertaking. Because of that, there's still a lot we don't know about this eerie, prehistoric predator.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the U-28 creature. During World War I, on a day that defied all logic, the German submarine U-28 sank the British steamer SS Iberian off the coast of Ireland. As the crew watched the ship disappear beneath the waves, an underwater explosion suddenly blasted a colossal creature into the air. This wasn't a figment of weary sailors' imaginations. The creature resembled a giant crocodile about 60 feet long, complete with 4 limbs and a long, pointed tail. For a fleeting 10 to 15 seconds, the stunned crew stood in awe as this marine behemoth arced above the sea before vanishing into the depths. The captain's account, published years later in 1935, sparked controversy due to the lack of corroborating evidence and the decades-long silence. But whether myth or reality, his story adds a thrilling chapter to the tales of unbelievable sea monsters that sailors swore were real. Could the oceans still hide such mysteries? In our number 9 spot today, we have the Gloucester sea serpent. Back in the summer of 1817, in the quiet town of Gloucester, Massachusetts, it was buzzing with tales that would make any sailor's hair stand on end. Hundreds of fishermen, sailors, and townsfolk claimed they saw a massive sea serpent slithering through the harbor's waters. This wasn't just a fish story. The creature was said to be over 100 feet long, sporting a series of humps and a snake-like head that looked oddly like a mix between a turtle and a horse, which I'm not really sure what that would look like. It moved with a graceful yet eerie serpentine motion and was even spotted coiled up at times. The excitement and fear were so real that the Linnean Society of New England jumped in, forming a committee to get to the bottom of it. They collected eyewitness accounts and even examined what they thought was a baby sea serpent, which unfortunately just turned out to be a deformed black snake. Despite the setback, the Gloucester sea serpent became one of the most well-documented sea monster sightings in American history. So, were all of these folks just seeing things, or was there really something colossal lurking beneath the waves? In our number 8 spot today, we have the HMS Plumper Sea Serpent. In 1857, the crew of the HMS Plumper, led by Captain George Henry Richards, had an encounter that would etch itself into maritime legend. While charting the waters off Vancouver Island, British Columbia, sailors spotted something extraordinary slicing through the waves. It was an enormous creature, estimated to be a staggering 100 feet long, with a head resembling a dog's and large, unsettling eyes that seemed to observe them just as keenly. Humps rose along its massive back as it moved swiftly against the current, defying everything they knew about sea creatures. The sight was so compelling that Captain Richards documented it in his official logs, and local newspapers quickly picked up the story. This wasn't just sailors' lore whispered over grog, it was a well-recorded event that added a thrilling chapter to sea serpent tales along the Pacific Northwest coast. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Valhalla sea serpent. In 1905, while sailing off the coast of Brazil aboard the yacht Valhalla, naturalists Edmund Meade Waldo and Michael J. Nicol experienced a moment that felt like stepping into a living legend. They spotted an unusual creature cutting through the water. A large fin rose about 6 feet above the waves, and atop that, a long neck extended another 8 feet into the air. The animal moved steadily, its mysterious form captivating the two men as it glided silently before disappearing after a few minutes. What makes this sighting particularly compelling is who these observers were. Both Meade Waldo and Nicol were respected fellows of the Zoological Society of London. Their detailed account was published in the Proceedings of the Zoological Society of London, igniting widespread discussions about the unknown marvels lurking beneath the ocean's surface. Could this have been a real-life sea serpent? A creature sailors had whispered about for centuries? In our number 6 spot today, we have the Monongahela sea serpent. In 1852, the American clipper ship Monongahela, under the command of Captain John Meny, became the center of one of the most astonishing sea tales ever recounted. While sailing through the remote stretches of the South Pacific, the crew reportedly harpooned and killed an enormous sea serpent. This wasn't just any sea creature. The beast was said to be over 100 feet long, with a head resembling an alligator and a body cloaked in glistening scales. The sailors managed to secure the massive carcass alongside their ship, likely imagining the sensation it would cause back home. But destiny took a dramatic twist. Before they could reach port, a fierce storm rolled in, and with it, their colossal catch was swept back into the abyss. News of their incredible encounter hit the newspapers, stirring up a mix of excitement and doubt. Lacking any physical proof, many people questioned the veracity of their story, suggesting it might have been an oversized sea snake or perhaps just an exaggerated fisherman's yarn. Nonetheless, the tale of the sea serpent remains one of the most intriguing accounts of unbelievable sea monsters that old sailors claimed were real. Who knows? Maybe the ocean still guards secrets that are yet to surface. In our number 5 spot today, we have Captain George Drever's sea serpent. In 1875, Captain George Drever of the bark Pauline found himself at the center of one of the most gripping sea monster tales ever recorded. On July 8th, while navigating the vast expanse of the South Atlantic, Captain Drever and his crew witnessed an extraordinary battle unfolding on the ocean's surface. A colossal creature with a long, eel-like body stretching about 30 feet or 9 meters, and a large head topped with 2 dorsal fins, was entwined around a massive whale. The mysterious beast coiled itself tightly as the whale thrashed violently, sending waves crashing and hearts racing aboard the Pauline. The sheer intensity of the struggle left the crew in awe, and Captain Drever didn't let the moment slip into obscurity. He penned a detailed report and even sketched the creature, with his account later published in the Zoologist Journal. While modern interpretations suggest they might have just witnessed a giant squid engaging the whale, misidentified due to the distance and the tumultuous conditions, the vividness of Drever's description keeps the debate alive. Was it a misunderstood encounter or a genuine sea serpent? Either way, this remarkable incident adds a thrilling chapter to the lore of unbelievable sea monsters. In our number 4 spot today, we have the USS Stein incident. In 1978, the USS Stein, a Knox-class frigate of the US Navy, was cruising through the Pacific Ocean when something extraordinary happened. The ship's sonar system began malfunctioning, and when the crew investigated, they found the sonar dome, the protective cover beneath the ship, had been seriously damaged. Technicians were baffled to discover the dome was covered in long, sharp scratches with hooked, claw-like structures embedded in the rubber coating. These weren't marks from rocks or man-made objects. They seemed almost alive. Experts speculated that a giant squid, possibly a species larger than any previously recorded, had attacked the sonar dome, perhaps mistaking it for a rival or potential prey. This incident provided some of the most compelling physical evidence of encounters with massive, rarely seen marine creatures, and suggested that giant squids might be far more aggressive than anyone had thought. Could the depths of the ocean be hiding creatures even more mysterious and colossal than we have ever imagined? In our number 3 spot today, we have the Alaskan sea serpent. In 1861, the crew of the French naval ship Alaskan experienced something straight out of a sailor's legend. While navigating the waters off the coast of Tenerife in the Canary Islands, they spotted a massive creature surfacing nearby. It looked like a giant squid, estimated to be about 25 feet or 7.6 meters long, a beast many thought only existed in myths. The sailors, filled with a mix of fear and excitement, sprang into action. They hurled harpoons and opened fire, determined to capture this elusive titan of the deep. Despite their efforts, the creature slipped away, disappearing beneath the waves and leaving them empty-handed but forever changed. The captain didn't let the encounter fade into obscurity. He submitted a detailed report to the French Academy of Sciences. The incident became one of the first recorded encounters with a giant squid, helping to shift scientific opinion towards accepting that these legendary creatures were, in fact, very real. In our number 2 spot today, we have the HMS Herald and the Sea Serpent. In 1857, the crew of the HMS Herald was charting the waters of the North Pacific near the Aleutian Islands when they experienced something that would make even the most seasoned sailor's heart skip a beat. Under the command of Captain Henry Mangles Denham, officers and crew, including the ship's naturalist, Berthold Seaman, they spotted an enormous sea creature breaking the surface of the calm, glassy water. This wasn't a mere glimpse. Conditions were perfect for observation. The creature was described as a gigantic serpent with a head resembling an oversized sea lion, complete with large, expressive eyes that seemed to study the ship just as intently as it was being watched. Its body stretched an estimated 60 feet or 18 meters long, undulating through the water with incredible speed and agility. At one point, it raised its head several feet above the waves, giving the uncanny impression of curiosity. The sighting was meticulously recorded in the ship's log and later detailed in Seaman's published works, adding a hefty dose of credibility to their account. This extraordinary encounter didn't just add another tale to sea serpent lore, it spurred genuine interest in marine exploration and the study of cryptozoology. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the St. Augustine Monster. In 1896, the peaceful sands of St. Augustine Beach in Florida became the stage for a maritime mystery that would captivate the nation. 2 young boys, Herbert Coles and Dunham Corbett, came across a massive carcass washed ashore, a discovery that was anything but ordinary. This enormous, unidentified mass stretched about 18 feet or 5.5 meters long and weighed an estimated 5 tons. It had a rubbery, fibrous texture and seemed to sport multiple arms or tentacles, leading excited locals to dub it the giant octopus. Intrigued, Dr. DeWitt Webb, founder of the St. Augustine Historical Society and Institute of Science, examined the bizarre find. He took samples and sent them off to the Smithsonian Institution, where initial examinations by Professor Addison Emery Verrill suggested it could be the remains of a giant squid or octopus. The possibility of a real-life sea monster set imaginations ablaze. However, skepticism grew over time due to the lack of definitive anatomical features. In 1971 and again in 1995, advanced analyses revealed that the mysterious carcass was likely decomposed whale blubber, specifically from a sperm whale. Despite the scientific explanation, the St. Augustine monster became one of the most famous globster cases, a term for unidentified organic masses that wash up on shores. This incident not only fueled public fascination with sea monsters, but also highlighted how the ocean's secrets can blur the line between myth and reality.
Starting off this countdown, we have the giant cannibal shark. Sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Honestly, maybe it is. So in 2003, scientists tagged a 9-foot-long great white shark. They did this in order to study the temperature changes in the ocean. Here's the thing. Several months later, the tag washed up on shore. The shark, nowhere to be seen. They checked the information on the tag, and that's when they were shocked. About 4 months after the tag was put on the shark, it dove to around 1,900 feet. They believe that's because the shark was attacked and eaten by something. But what creature in the ocean is going around eating a 9-foot-long great white shark? They still don't know. It could be a massive sea creature that we haven't found yet. or they think it might be an even bigger shark, making it a massive cannibal shark. If you're not afraid of the ocean yet, then this for sure has done it for you. Coming in at number 9, we have the lost city of Atlantis. There's a city that lies sunken underwater just off the coast of the Japanese island Yonaguni, making it Japan's very own Atlantis. Many people believe that the city is around 5,000 years old. There are complete pyramids, ruins of a castle, structures etched with faces, and rock sculptures that look like animals all underwater. It's theorized that a terrible earthquake caused the city to be engulfed by water. But to this day, we don't know the true origins of this mysterious underwater city. Conspiracy theorists believe that the CIA destroyed this island in order to expand America's economic zone. Unless we travel back in time, there's no way to find out more about the city and what happened to it. Coming in at number 8, we have Carrol A. Deering, aka the ghost ship of the Outer Banks. So on January 31st, 1921, the Carrol A. Deering was found abandoned off of Cape Hatteras in North Carolina. The crew was nowhere to be found. On top of that, tons of stuff was missing from the ship, including the crew's personal belongings, life rafts, logbooks, and navigational equipment. To this day, no one knows what happened to the crew aboard the ship. But of course, we got some theories. Theory 1 is that a mutiny occurred. Theory 2 is that they were ransacked by pirates. Theory 3 is that they were taking part in rum running. People stole the ship to use for the rum running, and when they were done, they just abandoned the ship and left it there. But like I said before, we don't know for sure. In our 7th spot, we have the electronic fog. Okay, this one is pretty weird, not gonna lie. So on December 4th, 1970, a man named Rob McGregor was flying over the Bermuda Triangle when he was met by this weird tunnel-shaped vortex. He entered it, and apparently his wings sounded like they were scraping along metal. All of the electronic and magnetic navigational instruments malfunctioned. When he looked up, all he saw was a dull gray fog. Also, there were strange clouds forming behind the airplane. They were only in the clouds for a couple of minutes, but claimed that they traveled for 40 minutes. When they got out of the fog, they were over Miami Beach, a flight that would have taken 75 minutes. He believes that this weird fog is what has caused other planes and boats and passengers to disappear in the Bermuda Triangle. So what is this weird electronic fog that he encountered while over the ocean? That's something I want to know. In our 6th spot today, we have the time travel. Legend goes that one day 3 ships were traveling through the Bermuda Triangle. Everything was going fine until they encountered a mysterious fog. When they emerged through the other end of the fog, there were only 2 ships. The other ship was way ahead of them. The crew aboard the ship claimed that the fog transported them back in time several years. There, they saw a bunch of different boats and passengers also sailing. Then they approached the same fog and they got transported back to the current day. Isn't that weird? Was this the same fog the pilot encountered? Like, what is going on in the ocean? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the disappearance of Keith Davis. Now, this case is certainly going to keep you up at night, so just a little warning. So in 2015, Keith Davis, a fisheries observer, headed out to sea with his crew. His job was to monitor all the catches and collect data on it. But about a month later, Keith disappeared off the ship in the middle of the day, in broad daylight. He has never been found. On top of that, the weather that day was calm, and he was an experienced observer, so it's not like he just fell overboard by accident. So what happened to him? Well, theory goes that he knew too much, so someone got rid of him. When police searched his email, they found photographic evidence of illegal things happening on board these ships, like they were allegedly smuggling people. He was also keeping track of a number of rule violations. Not only that, a year before his disappearance, Keith sent a mysterious email to his friends. In the email was a video of 4 men being shot to death while holding onto debris in the ocean. So theory goes that Keith was killed for knowing way too much. But still, to this day, we don't know exactly what happened to him. Coming in at number 4, we have the Ellen Austin. In 1880, a ship named the Ellen Austin set sail to New York from Liverpool. During their travels, the crew spotted a ship floating near the Bermuda Triangle. They approached it and found that nothing was wrong with the ship, but all the crew on board were missing. So they decided to put some of their own crew members on board this mysterious ship and have it come with them. But during the trip, the 2 ships got separated. They were separated for a couple of days before the Ellen Austin spotted the ship once again. However, all their crew on board vanished. There was no trace of them. Now, the story goes on saying that they placed another set of crew members aboard the ship, and once again, the exact same thing happened to those men. They disappeared off the ship without a trace. But that account hasn't been confirmed. Either way, this mystery gave birth to an urban legend. Basically, a cursed ghost ship lurks the waters near the Bermuda Triangle. Those who hop on board will mysteriously disappear without a trace. In our third spot, we have the disappearing aircrafts. In 1945, 5 torpedo bomber planes took off for a 3-hour exercise. But while flying over the Atlantic Ocean, they disappeared without a trace. It all started when the flight's leader noticed that his compass wasn't working properly. So he was worried that they were flying in the wrong direction. He instructed the planes to then change paths, thinking that they were going to then be heading towards Florida. But in reality, they were just traveling deeper into the Atlantic. As the planes started getting close to the Bermuda Triangle, their signals began to fail. The last few things the pilots ever said were, and I quote, "Everything looks strange, even the ocean. And it looks like we are entering white water. We're completely lost." Then the communication was cut completely and they were never heard from again. In our second spot, we have the severed feet. What would you do if you were out on a nice stroll on the beach when you came across someone's missing arm or foot? Believe it or not, this has happened a number of times. Since 2007, severed human feet have been washing up on the shore of the Pacific Northwest. The first was a right foot still inside of a size 12 Adidas shoe. The second was again a right foot, size 12, but it was in a Reebok shoe. Since then, 15 more feet have washed up on shore. To this day, we don't know who they belong to or what happened to them, or even if they were victims of the same killer. It's really freaking creepy if you ask me. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Witchcraft. This is the name of a boat that set sail on December 22nd, 1967. On board was the captain, Dan Burrack, and his friend, Patrick Horgan. The two headed off to get a good look at Miami's Christmas lights. However, after traveling just 1 mile out, they contacted the Coast Guard, saying that the boat had hit something. But there was no damage. Dan seemed to be calm on the call to the Coast Guard and said they just needed a tow to the shore. So they figured that the boat's propeller was just damaged or something like that. The Coast Guard immediately went out, but when he arrived at the spot the boat was said to be, no one was there. It took him only 19 minutes to get there, yet the boat was already gone. Here's where it gets super weird. This boat was virtually unsinkable. Not only did they have life jackets and lifeboats on board, but the boat had a special flotation device installed in it. This made it basically unsinkable. So even if the boat started filling with water, part of it would still be sticking out of the water, so the Coast Guard would be able to see it. And also, they had flare guns on board with them, so if something serious started to happen, they could have set those off. They didn't. The boat and the 2 friends on board just disappeared without a trace, and to this day have never been found.
In our number 10 spot today, we have the upsweep. We all know how little we know about the ocean, and that includes what kinds of creatures lie in it. So while this mysterious sound out of context probably wouldn't be that freaky, when put into this situation it becomes quite a bit more eerie. This sound is referred to as upsweep, and it was caught when the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory started its sound surveillance system in August of 1991. The sound is apparently more seasonal, with its peaks in spring and fall, but it is unclear if the changing of seasons is responsible for this sound, or if it's coming from something that lurks in the ocean and remains undiscovered. Just for reference, here is a clip of that sound played at 20 times the original speed. It is possible that this sound could be coming from underwater volcanic activity, but considering the fact that this has yet to be proven, I am here to ask the question, what if it's not? In our number 9 spot today, we have Bermeja. Bermeja was an island that could be found on many maps spanning from the 16th to the 20th century, but in a 1997 survey, the island could not be located. In an extensive 2009 study, it was concluded that the island that was once labeled as Bermeja just didn't exist, which left a whole host of questions. The island was supposed to be located just off of the north coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, which is particularly important because if it did exist, its location would be integral to determining the boundaries for exploitation rights of oil in the Gulf of Mexico. So of course, when this island that's been included on many maps seemingly just doesn't exist anymore, people really began to speculate what could have happened. There are a few major theories with this one. The first is that the original observation of the island was incorrect and then no one ever went to double check that this island existed. The next being that possible shifts in the geography of the ocean floor along with rising sea levels were the cause for this island to completely disappear. The third theory is the most mysterious out of them all, and this is the theory that the island was blown up by the CIA so as to expand the economic zone belonging to the United States. It certainly is not an easy thing for an island to just disappear, so it truly is quite a large mystery about what exactly happened here, and at this point, it is unclear if we'll ever know for sure. In our number 8 spot today we have the Sarah Joe. The Sarah Joe was a fishing boat that departed from Maui in February of 1979. There were 5 crew members aboard the boat, and when they left around 10 AM that day, the skies were perfectly clear, but while they were out at sea, the wind began to change and they ended up encountering a horrible storm. People on shore who were rightfully worried about the crew headed to the shoreline to try and wave the boat back in, but they were unable to locate the boat at all. One of the passengers' fathers even went out on a separate boat in the middle of the storm to try and see if anything could be done or if he could at least locate the ship, but to no avail. It was presumed that all of the crew members had been lost due to the severity of the storm. The following days of course consisted of many hours of searching, but neither the ship or any of the men were located. Flash forward almost an entire decade to September of 1988, and a member of the initial search team, John Naughton, was on a wildlife expedition on a deserted atoll around 2,000 miles from Maui when he discovered a small boat and a makeshift grave. He left the site as untouched as he could and immediately contacted authorities, who were then able to confirm that the boat was the Sarah Joe and the person buried in the makeshift grave was one of the passengers who went missing all those years ago. While experts do agree that the boat could have drifted here and it would have only taken about 3 months to do so, this area was surveyed in 1985 and there was no trace of either the boat or the makeshift grave. So where would the boat and this crew member have been from the 1979 disappearance until after the 1985 survey? These are the types of questions that still remain unanswered to this day. There are of course theories, but none that cover all the mysteries this story holds. In our number 7 spot today we have the Yonaguni Monument. Just off of the coast of Yonaguni in Japan, there is a diving location that has a high population of hammerhead sharks, making it a large and popular attraction. In 1986, a diver in the area noticed some formation on the seabed that resembled a structure of some sort. This led to a team of scientists going on a dive to gather more information, and this is when the Yonaguni Monument was officially discovered. The monument is made of sandstone and mudstones, but here's the mysterious thing. Scientists can't agree on its origins. There are some who believe that this is a natural formation, but there are some who swear that it is man-made. The stairs are over 165 feet long and 65 feet wide, which obviously means that they are strikingly huge. There are pretty reasonable arguments for both sides, and considering the fact that this thing is at least 10,000 years old, I guess it's fair that we may not have all the answers, but it certainly is strange that we can't quite figure it out. At the end of the day, I really don't want to meet whatever thing would need stairs this large. In our number 6 spot today we have the Milky Sea phenomenon. This phenomenon is certainly much more beautiful than the name would suggest, and while we kind of know what causes it, there are still many unanswered questions that surround it. The first recorded sighting of this phenomenon occurred in 1846 when Raphael Semmes, who was the captain of the CSS Alabama, spotted it and was horrified by what he was seeing. He wrote, "From the deep blue water into a patch of water so light it startled me. The whole face of nature seemed changed, and with a little stretch of the imagination, the Alabama might have been conceived to be a phantom ship lighted up by the sickly and unearthly glare of a phantom sea." This phenomenon is so bright that it can be seen from the satellites orbiting Earth, and while it looks amazing in pictures, I can only imagine how frightening it would be to see in person when little is known about why it happens. It is believed that the glow is caused by bioluminescent bacteria that grows in all oceans in our world, but but in order to produce a glow like we've seen, this bacteria has to be multiplied by billions of trillions, and we don't know how or why this happens. Also, we don't know for sure if that is what is responsible for the glow, it's just our current best guess. Just for the sake of our expansive imaginations, let's say that it really is this bacteria causing the glow. Why does it come to the ocean surface? Why in such great numbers? Every time this happens, it's at unpredictable times, locations, and sizes, so basically it remains a strange but stunning ocean mystery. In our number 5 spot today we have the SS Bechimo. The SS Bechimo was built in Sweden in 1914 and it belonged to the Hudson's Bay Company. This ship was used to trade provisions for pelts in Inuit settlements along the Northwest Territories of Canada. On October 1st, 1931, the ship was ending its trading run and was packed with fur when it became trapped in pack ice. The crew decided to briefly abandon the ship and they traveled over the ice to the nearest town for shelter. Because of the location and the time, it wasn't exactly going to be simple for everyone to be rescued. On October 15th, the Hudson's Bay Company sent an aircraft to save 22 of the members, but 15 remained and began to prepare in case they needed to stay the winter. Because the ship couldn't be heated, the remaining crew members would return to the ship every few days to chip away some of the ice, but also to grab essential items from the ship. On November 24th, there was a powerful storm, and once it had cleared, the Bechimo was gone. The remaining crew assumed that it had sunk, but this is really where our mystery gets started. An Inuk hunter spotted the ship around 72 miles from the camp the remaining crew members had set up, and somehow they ended up locating it, removing the rest of the valuables, and then abandoning it for the last time because it was believed that this ship wouldn't last the rest of the winter. After the rest of the crew was finally rescued, the ship ended up being spotted around 480 miles from its previous sighting. For 40 years after, the Bechimo was frequently spotted floating in different locations, sometimes even providing people with shelter during storms, but was never once captured. In 2006, the Alaskan government began to work on a project to find the Bechimo, but since the most previous sighting, she has never been located again. While the ship is now presumed sunken, it would have been the longest sailing ghost ship of all time. Ships rarely survive for nearly as long while being unmanned, especially in the crushing icy waters. We still haven't found the wreck of this ship either, so perhaps it is still out there floating somewhere. In our number 4 spot today we have the Devil's Sea. The Devil's Sea is like the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific as it lies in a region just south of Tokyo. This area is often thought as some sort of a paranormal area because of the consistent horrible happenings that occur in it. This area is one of the 12 vile vortices in the world, with the Bermuda Triangle being the most famous one. Above the Devil's Sea, planes are known to seemingly just drop out of the sky like something is reaching up and grabbing them. Methane deposits cause large explosions in the area, and during World War II, this area was the site of over 20 missing submarines. There have also been numerous ships, some twice the size of the Titanic, who have gone missing without a trace after sailing through the Devil's Sea. This is all to say that while we don't really know what lurks in this area, it's probably safest to just stay the heck away from it. In our number 3 spot today we have the Cassie Nicole. The Cassie Nicole was a boat that set sail from Richmond Hill, Georgia on April 10th, 1990 with 4 people on board. During the second day aboard, one of the passengers realized that the boat was suddenly taking on water, and at this same time the pumps and radio were not working, which left them with little to no options. The crew decided it was time to board a life raft and abandon ship. After a day of floating on this life raft, one of the passengers named Nathan saw the ship's hatch cover floating by them and thought that it might be able to support him better. Once he hopped onto the cover, he ended up losing sight of the other 3 crew members. Later in the day, he saw a freighter go by multiple times, and he was hoping that it had picked up the 3 crew members he had lost contact with. After 3 days of floating at sea, Nathan was finally rescued, but he received the news that the other crew members hadn't been found. Months went by with no sign of the others until a few months later when Nathan's sister, as well as the owner of the boat, began receiving strange phone calls from someone who was speaking in Spanish. The person on the other line said their name as well as the names of the missing people, and in the final phone call the stranger said, in English, "I'm bringing them home," but there has still never been a sign of them. The family of the disappeared men believe that they may be alive somewhere but are being held in a foreign country, but why? And why would someone say that they were bringing them home only to not do that? In our number 2 spot today we have the loneliest whale. This whale has been nicknamed the loneliest whale in the world, but the truth is, we don't really know if that's true because we've never actually seen it. This whale, which we don't know if it's a male or a female, or what whale species it belongs to, sings its song like no other whale does. The whale was first heard in 1989 on a hydrophone, and while the calls were most similar to that of a blue whale, there was one striking difference, and that was the frequency of the calls. This whale calls at 52 Hz, with regular blue whales calling between 10 and 40 Hz. Even fin whales are usually heard at 20 Hz, so it's just left everyone stumped as to what could be going on here. A researcher named Bill Watkins dedicated his life to trying to reveal what exactly is going on here, and while he passed away in 2004, he found that this whale was not only unusual, but totally unique. The biggest challenge is the fact that we cannot locate this whale. Their calls can be heard for hundreds of miles, and trying to find one single whale in the vastness of the ocean is next to impossible. Many people have suggested that perhaps the whale is deaf, and this is what has led to its unique song, but of course without the whale, how could we possibly know for sure? In our number 1 spot today we have the French sailors. Yves Emmanuel Payne and Laurent Hernas were French sailors who were hired to sail a boat to its new owners. Their trip would see them departing from Annapolis, Maryland and heading to Guadalupe, but when they never arrived at their destination, searches quickly began. Unlike many of the other stories similar to this one, there were actually sightings of this ship, most of them occurring along the intercoastal waterway, which was far off from the course the ship was intended to take. Along with these sightings came the frightening news that the witnesses claimed to see a third man on the boat, which made people begin to believe that it had been hijacked, which wouldn't have been all that surprising considering the state of the art vessel they were on. Despite these sightings, the boat was never found, and neither were the men. To add even more strange occurrences to this story, however, around 2 months after the disappearance, a police officer in South Carolina pulled over a speeding car. After a sort of strange encounter with those in the vehicle, it was later discovered that 2 of the 3 men in the car were the missing Yves Emmanuel and Laurent, but at this point they of course had already been released. What exactly happened here has never been fully discovered, despite this all happening in 1991. Were the sailors kidnapped? Were they part of an elaborate plan to steal the ship, despite their loved ones saying that they would never do such a thing? It all remains a mystery. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot we have the Nina. The Nina was a ship that was once the flagship of the New York Yacht Club, but that unfortunately changed in 2013 when it disappeared on the Tasman Seas with its owner and 6 other people on board. The ship had left New Zealand and was bound for Australia on May 29th, and it was estimated to be somewhere from an 8 to 10 day trip. The last time the ship was heard from was on June 4th, and it wasn't until June 12th that the search for the ship began after friends and family of those on board began to get worried as the ship was now a few days overdue. The rescuers searched until it was called off on July 6th after they had searched 737,000 square nautical miles and had found nothing. The search was extremely thorough and they still were unable to find anything. No yacht, no debris, no life raft, and none of the people on board. The last communications with the Nina came on June 3rd and 4th as a crew member was contacting a meteorologist and router for Pacific cruisers in order to get some advice on where the ship should go so as to escape a nasty storm they were encountering. There was also an undelivered text message from June 4th that the satellite phone company was able to retrieve that stated that the storm sails had been shredded the night before and that they would update them later at 6 p.m. with the course info. This definitely wasn't an ideal situation, but the message didn't signal that they would have been in immediate distress either. Aside from these messages, there wasn't any other contact that seemed to have been attempted, despite the ship being well equipped with emergency radios, flares, a satellite phone, and all of that sort of thing. Right now, the best guess as to what happened is that the ship may have sunk really quickly following the storms, and it didn't allow any time for the passengers to activate any of the emergency equipment, but at the end of the day, this is all just a guess, and what exactly happened out there still remains a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the mysterious whale die-off. Between 2015 and 2016, there was a mysterious large die-off of whales located in the Gulf of Alaska. The deaths first began to be discovered in late May of 2015 when the carcasses of endangered fin whales were found floating near Kodiak. The total of whales found in the area climbed to 30, with additional reports of 5 other whales found in the waters just off of British Columbia. Because of the difficulties in retrieving the past whales, it was almost impossible to find out what exactly was causing this. The leading suspect was a toxin being produced by algae, but when one of the carcasses that researchers were able to recover was tested, it came up negative for the toxin that they were searching for. It is possible that the decomposition that had already taken place was the cause for this negative test, but it's also equally as possible that this just wasn't the cause in the first place. The good news is that since 2016, this strange and upsetting anomaly has stopped, so the whales are safe. But unfortunately, we aren't any closer to getting answers on what exactly happened here. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Kaz 2. The Kaz 2 was a 12-meter long catamaran that set sail on April 15th of 2007 and was found adrift just 3 days later on April 18th, but without her crew. When the ship set sail, she was carrying 3 crew members, all of which were relatively inexperienced sailors. On April 18th, someone in a helicopter reported seeing the adrift ship, but it wasn't until April 20th that maritime authorities were able to catch up with the boat and boarded it. It was then, however, that they uncovered the bizarre circumstances on the ship. Everything on the ship was perfectly normal, aside from the fact that the crew had just seemingly vanished. There was a meal set on the table waiting to be eaten, a laptop was open and on, the engine was still running, all of the life vests were still on board, and all of the ship's emergency systems were fully functioning. The only out of place things were, of course, the missing crew, the fact that one of the ship's sails was badly shredded, and there was no life raft on board, but it is still unclear whether there was ever one on board. There are many theories as to what may have happened to the crew, but none have ever been substantiated or confirmed, which leaves the fate of the 3 crew members a complete mystery that we may never get the answers to. In our number 7 spot today, we have the disappearance of Bas Jan Adder. Bas Jan Adder was a Dutch conceptual and performance artist as well as a skilled sailor. He set sail on July 9th, 1975 in a ship called the Ocean Wave as he was setting sail to make his single-handed west to east coast crossing of the North Atlantic. He estimated that this trip was going to take around 2.5 months, but it wasn't until 9 months after he set sail that his boat was found unmanned, floating almost vertically in the water. The people who found the ship were Spanish fishermen who then took the boat back to Spain, where it ended up being stolen. Throughout all of this, Baz was nowhere to be found, and even still, over 40 years later, the mystery of what exactly happened remains. There are people who speculate he fell overboard in heavy bad weather, but this is of course impossible to tell, especially with neither the boat or Baz to provide evidence. The information to go on has only been what was provided by the people who saw the boat before it was stolen, so of course that is not nearly enough to really have any questions answered. What happened to Baz on his sailing trip is still a mystery, but I do hope one day we find out at least some answers. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Gulf of Mexico wreck. For almost 2 centuries, this shipwreck went undiscovered and undisturbed until the early 2000s when a pipeline bisected it, and since then it has been plaguing those who are trying to figure out what mysteries it holds. A team was assembled in order to try and search the wreckage, but every time they attempted, something went wrong that made it impossible for them. Every time they tried, the exploration sub would malfunction right before they were able to begin checking it out. Like, I'm talking about everything, from video monitors going out whenever they fired the thrusters, to the sonar breaking, to hydraulics going haywire, one after another. After this whole ordeal, the Navy sent a research sub that pretty much just ended up self-destructing its own rover once it got into the water, and when it made its way to the wreck, its arms were too short to reach anything to collect. So this is all to say that it seems like whatever mysteries this shipwreck is holding, they are destined to remain as such. I'm starting to think that maybe this shipwreck is cursed. In our number 5 spot today, we have the disappearance of George Smith. George Allen Smith and his wife Jennifer Hagel Smith had just married and were aboard the MS Brilliance of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, as they were doing a Mediterranean cruise for their honeymoon. On July 5th, 2005, the ship was somewhere just off of the coast of Turkey when it was discovered that George had disappeared. The night he was last seen, he was intoxicated from both alcohol as well as prescription drugs, and there was blood evidence found in his cabin as well on the side of the ship. There were two main theories in regards to his disappearance, the first being that his intoxication led to him falling overboard the ship, and the other was that perhaps a robbery had gone bad and foul play had been involved. This case was investigated for over a decade, with even the FBI and their mafia division getting involved at one point. But despite this, neither George, his body, or what really happened to him has ever been found. There have been many assumptions made over the years, but 16 years later, it is still a mystery. In our number 4 spot today, we have the MV Tai Ching 21. On November 9th, 2008, a Taiwanese fishing vessel was found floating, but it was empty and had been totally gutted by fire. The 50-ton ship had obviously suffered a fire, but since there was no smoke anymore, it was clear it had been a few days since the fire was put out. Upon inspecting the ship, it was realized that the ship's lifeboat, along with its 3 life rafts, were missing, not to mention the crew of 29 missing men. The last transmission from the radio of the ship was on October 28th, but after that, nothing had been heard from the members of the crew and there was no mayday call ever received. The search for the missing men spanned 21,000 square miles or 54,000 square kilometers, and searches were conducted by both the US Air Force as well as the New Zealand Air Force, but unfortunately the search turned up no results. The last radio transmission from the ship was a personal call from the captain to his wife, which took place on that October 25th, but that was the last time anyone had heard. There still hasn't been any sign of the missing 29 crew members, which of course is absolutely devastating. It is clear they must have abandoned the ship after the fire started, but their fate from there remains completely unknown. In our number 3 spot today, we have the disappearance of Rebecca Corium. Rebecca Corium was a British crew member and youth worker on the Disney Wonder cruise ship in 2011. In the early morning hours of March 22nd, Rebecca was seen on CCTV footage in the crew lounge speaking to someone on the telephone, and it appears as though the conversation was a bit emotionally distressing for her. A few hours later, people began to worry because Rebecca hadn't shown up for the start of her shift, which was really unlike her, and when people went to go and see if maybe she had slept in or something like that, they were unable to locate her anywhere on the ship, which of course made people even more worried. That CCTV footage of Rebecca is the last known sighting of her, and since then no one has been able to figure out where she went or what happened to her. The first assumption was of course that perhaps she had gone overboard, and it prompted extensive searches of the waters in the area, but unfortunately nothing turned up. Almost an entire year after her disappearance, someone emailed Rebecca's family to say that she was 85% sure she had seen Rebecca with a man on the streets of Venice, but unfortunately this potential lead didn't turn up any real evidence or clues. Many people state that perhaps Disney Cruise Lines know more about what really happened, as other crew members have suggested that the entire ship is covered with so many cameras that there's no way that whatever happened could have been missed, but of course there's no evidence that has been discovered which would prove these allegations. It has been 10 years since Rebecca's extremely mysterious disappearance, and still no one knows exactly what happened on that terrible night. Hopefully one day some answers are found so Rebecca's family can get the closure that they deserve. In our number 2 spot today, we have the disappearance of Jim Gray. Jim Gray was an incredibly important computer scientist who was responsible for many computer advancements that changed things for all of us. Other than being a computer scientist, he was also an experienced and skilled sailor, and one day on January 28, 2007, he set sail for a short trip so he could head out and spread his mother's ashes, as she had recently passed away. As he began his trip, Jim spoke to his wife on the phone and said he would call her once he got back in range. After their phone call, he called his daughter as well and left a little message for her, and then he was off on his trip, but unfortunately he never ended up returning. Jim's wife Donna was the one who raised the alarm bells as she was away on a trip, but like I mentioned, Jim said he would call her later, and he never did. At this point is when the huge searches began. Thousands of images of the area where Jim or his boat might be were uploaded to Amazon Mechanical Turk for people to look through and see if they could find any kind of signs, but to no avail. Jim also had an automatic emergency position indicating beacon on his ship, but whatever happened to Jim and the ship clearly didn't meet the requirements, or perhaps it had some sort of malfunction, or maybe it was even turned off. To this day, no one knows what happened to Jim or his boat, as no sign or trace of either has ever been found. The theories of what may have happened are endless and range from Jim intentionally disappearing to him being kidnapped for his computer skills and brain in order to do some kind of inside job, and really everything in between. There most definitely are theories that are seemingly more likely than others, but at the end of the day, they are all a possibility. In 2012, Jim's widow asked the court to declare him dead in absentia, which ended up being granted, so as of 2012, Jim has been declared dead, but that does not mean that he is. In our number 1 spot today, we have the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley. On March 21st, 1998, Amy and her family boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean cruise ship en route to Curaçao. On March 24th, after a fun night on the ship, Amy was hanging out and having a couple of drinks with the ship's band, and one of the members explained that she parted ways with them around 1 a.m. After this, around 5:15 a.m., Amy's father said he saw her sleeping on the cabin balcony. Unfortunately, however, once 6 a.m. rolled around, she wasn't there anymore, and this was the beginning of the mystery. Once it was realized that Amy was missing, extensive searches were launched for full days before they ended up being called off when no signs or traces of Amy had ever been found. While this is all super mysterious and nobody really had anything to go on, the plot only thickens with this story. After her disappearance, people began to report seeing Amy. One sighting was by Canadian tourists in 1998 who said that they had seen a woman who resembled Amy and who had tattoos that matched hers on a beach in Curaçao. A member of the United States Navy said that he saw her in a brothel and said that she told him her name was Amy and she asked for help, saying she wasn't allowed to leave. The most recent alleged sighting comes in 2005 when a woman claimed she saw Amy in a department store in Barbados. She said that Amy entered the restroom with 3 men who then threatened her if she didn't follow through on some sort of deal. The men left briefly and the witness said the woman turned to her, said that her name was Amy and that she was from Virginia and needed help, but the men returned right after to take her away again. This story is devastatingly sad and has so many turns, and to this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Amy or if these witness sightings are accurate at all.
Starting off this countdown, we have the HMS Sea Serpent. In August of 1848, the crew on the HMS Daedalus was sailing in the South Atlantic when they spotted this terrifying creature. According to the ship's captain and several members of the crew, they claimed that the monster was 60 feet in length, with 4 feet of his head raising out of the water. This massive sea beast lurked around the ship for 20 minutes before taking off. To this day, we don't know what it is that they saw. They described it as being a long snake with a dragon's head. Pretty weird and creepy, right? Well, they aren't the only ones who witnessed this too. It was spotted a second time by the American brig Daphne, and in fact, crew on board even shot at it. Scientists claim that maybe they just saw a whale. But come on, a bunch of experienced sailors would know the difference between a whale and something that's not a whale. And at number 9 today, we have the Mary Celeste. And if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. To this day, the mysterious case of the Mary Celeste is considered one of the creepiest cases in nautical history. Basically, in 1872, the Mary Celeste was found abandoned in the middle of choppy waters. The crew was nowhere to be found. All the cargo on board remained untouched. Now, the lifeboats were missing, which makes people believe that the crew tried to get off the ship and flee. But why would they just abandon their ship like that? Well, we got a number of theories. 1, a sea monster got them. 2, a pirate takeover occurred. 3, they were abducted by aliens, or 4, they consumed bad food and they all went mad. I know, it seems wild. To make matters weirder though, the crew and lifeboats were never found. No one knows what happened aboard that ship. In our 8th spot, we have the Baltic Sea anomaly. In 2011, a group of divers went out looking for treasure in the Baltic Sea, and they came across something weird. It was a 70-meter long weird object laying 300 feet below sea level. This thing has since been named the Baltic Sea Anomaly, and no one knows what the heck it is. It's just this massive steel-looking structure shaped like a disc with some weird patterns on it. Gets weirder when the divers claim their equipment randomly stopped working when they got closer to the object. There was a massive electrical interference there. So what is this thing? Honestly, we don't know. But some people think it's a glacial deposit left from thawing glaciers. Or it's part of a UFO spacecraft from one extreme to another. Could be either or, who knows. In our 7th spot, we have the 3 men. In 2007, 3 Australian men headed out on an expedition together. 3 days later, their ship was found drifting by itself in the middle of the ocean. The men were nowhere to be found. That's not all. On the ship, they found knives all over the cabin floor, as if there had been a fight and people were scrambling for weapons. What happened to these men still remains a mystery to this day. But of course, we got the theories. One is that they got into a devastating fight and they all ended up dying. Or 2, their propeller became snarled in a fishing line. One dude went to go free the line but then fell into the ocean. The second dude tried to save him and then fell in as well, and then so on with the third guy, or who even knows. Okay, we don't know for sure, that's just a theory. The only thing we do know is that this case is pretty creepy. Moving on to number 6, we have the Kraken. So it may just be that the Kraken is real, but it's not what we think it is. In fact, the legend of the Kraken was thought to have been born after a number of sailors spotted giant squids while sailing. So the Kraken might actually just be giant squids. In 1870, a giant squid washed up in New Zealand. Legend goes that it was as tall as the top of a ship's main mast, and it could easily take over a ship by wrapping its tentacles around the hull and crushing it. Is this true? Who knows? But no one believed that giant squids were real until around 2005. That's when scientists caught a photo of one. Then in 2013 they got a video of one. Now they believe there are millions of giant squids out there. The mystery here is, what beast did the sailors encounter in 1870? Was it a ginormous squid, or was it a kraken, or is a squid a kraken? Who even knows, okay? There's just so many questions out there that we need answers to. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed shipwreck. Back in the early 2000s, a natural gas company was laying pipeline in the ocean when they came across a shipwreck. Nowadays, this shipwreck is considered cursed or haunted. Let me explain why. So after the shipwreck was discovered, a team was sent down there to check it out. But everything that could go wrong did. First, the exploration sub malfunctioned right as it was getting ready to explore the wreck. Then the Navy sent a research sub down there and it literally self-destructed upon entering the water. Then over the course of a couple of years, other attempts have been made to explore the ship, but those have gone wrong as well. None have been successful. So now it's believed that this ship is cursed and doesn't want anyone entering it. In our 4th spot, we have the disappearing submarines. In 1968, 4 different submarines all mysteriously went missing. As a result, people believe that this can no way just be a coincidence. Something was out there sinking these subs. The subs were the USS Scorpion, the Soviet submarine K-129, a French submarine Mermaid, and the INS Dakar. In fact, the French sub and the INS Dakar disappeared only 4 days apart. The French submarine has still never been found. What's weird is that it disappeared only an hour away from its port, so you think they'd be able to track it down, but nope. So what are the odds that 4 massive submarines go missing the exact same year? What could have caused this? We'll probably never know. In our 3rd spot, we have Sylvester Butler Jr. Apparently a number of people mysteriously vanish off of cruise ships each year. Most of them have never been found. Today, let's look at the weird case of Sylvester Butler Jr. In May of 2017, Sylvester boarded a cruise ship headed to the Pacific Islands. While on board though, the crew noticed he was acting weird. He kept to himself, barely talked to anyone else, and housekeeping claimed that he never unpacked his bags. The only charge on his bill was the occasional soft drink he would order to his room. Also, every time the cruise made a stop, he never left the ship. Then somewhere between Fiji and the final port Sydney, crew noticed that he was missing. No one knows what happened to him. And the ship's CCTV footage revealed nothing. It's sad, but theory goes that Butler jumped off the ship and took his own life. Apparently he suffered from a chronic genetic kidney disease, so maybe he wanted to end his suffering, but we don't know for sure. On top of that, I believe that his body was never found. Coming in our 2nd spot today, we have the Stronsay Beast. The Stronsay Beast is the name given to a massive carcass that washed ashore on Stronsay Island on September of 1808. At first, people thought it was just the body of a shark, But this creature had paws instead of fins. So then people were hella confused. Not only that, but it was 55 feet long. But part of its tail was missing, so clearly this thing was even bigger than that. This beast was described as follows, and I quote, "Its flesh was described as being like coarse, ill-colored beef, entirely covered with fat and tallow, and without the least resemblance or affinity to fish. The skin, which was gray-colored and had an elastic texture, was said to be about 2 inches thick in parts." End quote. Not only that, but its bristles glowed in the dark when wet, and the contents in its stomach were red. So what is this beast? The Natural History Society of Edinburgh believes that it is a sea serpent of some sorts. Maybe the Loch Ness Monster or its long-lost brother, who knows. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Orang-Medan. So this next mystery is pretty freaking creepy, I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna keep you up at night. So in 1947, 2 American ships received a distress call from the ship the Orang-Medan. The SOS call was from a crew member that stated everyone on board the ship had died. Then all of a sudden, his SOS ended with his last message being, "I die." When the ships arrived, they found the ship completely unharmed. The entire crew, including a dog on board, had died. Everyone had a terrified look plastered on their face. No one knows what happened to the ship. Theory goes though that maybe they were exposed to some dangerous gas and died. That seems to be the most common theory out there. Starting off this countdown, we have coelacanth. What's confusing about these fish isn't their name. It's the fact that everyone thought that they went extinct alongside the dinosaurs. Then millions of years later, they were rediscovered. These dudes have the most famous comeback story of all time. So in the 19th century, scientists discovered a fossil of this fish. This fossil was over 410 million years old. They thought that they went extinct over 66 million years ago. So it shocked scientists in 1938 when they were rediscovered off of the coast of South Africa. But they did have some new features thanks to evolution. Now the fish has 4 fins that move more like limbs than fins. Theory goes that maybe they were going to become a land-dwelling amphibian, and then they kinda just changed their mind. I know that's not how evolution works, but it's the easiest way to describe it. So yeah, here's a creature that used to rule the world alongside dinosaurs. In our 9th spot today, we have Nautilus. This is an ancient mollusk that has been around for 500 million years. In fact, they have been around before Pangea was even fully formed. Now, originally there were 10,000 different species, but now only a few are left and are at risk of extinction. That's because of us. We are over harvesting them, and on top of that, they are slow at reproducing. They need to be left alone right now because they run the risk of extinction. It's kinda sad once you think about it. Like, they survived for hundreds of millions of years and only now start to die thanks to humans. Coming in at number 8, we have the horseshoe crab. Now what's trippy is that despite their name, they are not crabs. In fact, they are more closely related to spiders or scorpions. Isn't that weird? Now these bad boys are considered one of evolution's ultimate survivors. That's because they date back to 450 million years, meaning they survived 5 mass extinctions. Now these guys can grow anywhere from 18 to 19 inches, from head to tail. Males grow a little less in size, only being 14 to 15 inches. Still, that's pretty big. The horseshoe crab consists of 3 parts. They got a front shell, a back shell, and a tail. Now you may be looking at this tail and you're like, whoa, what the hell? No, that thing can sting me and then kill me. False. Horseshoe crabs, although creepy looking, are harmless. But they do have eyes everywhere. They have 10 in total, and that freaks me out. In our 7th spot today, we have the goblin shark. Now, if you've seen my other video on sea creatures, then you know how much I hate this guy. It literally gives me the creeps, and I'll show you why in a second. Now, the goblin shark has actually been declared a living fossil, and that's due to the fact that it was thought to have gone extinct millions of years ago. That was until 1891, when a goblin shark was spotted off the coast of Japan. Researchers realized that the shark was indeed still alive, and in fact, it barely changed over time, hence why it's considered a living fossil. So these creatures can grow 12 feet long and can weigh up to 460 pounds. But in 2000, they found a giant goblin shark that was 20 feet long. So now researchers say that they have no real idea about how big they can truly get. Now, these things have the creepiest looking appearance, hence why I'm not the biggest fan of them. Plus, they have this weird ligament thing in their jaw that makes it so that they can extend their mouth out and snatch up their prey. Plus, their mouths launch out really fast. That's also why its mouth area just looks so creepy. In our 6th spot today, we have the lamprey. Has anyone here watched a series of unfortunate events? You know, the movie with Jim Carrey, not the TV show. Well, you know that scene where they're on the lake and the giant leeches start attacking their boat? Well, lamprey look exactly like those giant leeches. These things look like they're a mix between a snake, an eel, and a leech. They can be anywhere from 5 to 40 inches in length, and they attack fish by sucking the life out of them. They're literally like a vampire. Now wait until you see their mouth. They have 11 or 12 rows of teeth that wrap around in their mouth like a ring. And once they latch onto their victim, they use a barbed tongue to pierce the fish and then just drain the blood out of them. They also excrete a blood thinner to prevent blood clotting. What's crazy is that these creatures have survived 4 major extinctions in their 360 million year existence. That is wild. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the frilled shark. Now this is another pretty creepy looking shark. In fact, it doesn't even look like a shark. It looks like an eel mixed with a snake mixed with a shark. But fun fact, these sharks are actually the cousins of the great white shark and the hammerhead shark. Now these bad boys have been around for 80 million years. Pretty insane, right? They live in the dark abyss of the deep sea and have rarely changed over the years. Now they were given the name of the frilled shark because of the frilly appearance of their gills. They also are kind of similar to snakes because they have hinged jaws that allow them to eat big creatures whole. But you don't need to worry, okay? They live deep in the ocean and they don't really show themselves to humans. In our 4th spot today, we have the wobbegong shark. Again, another shark that doesn't really look like a shark. And that's because this shark has camouflage techniques, and it likes to blend in with algae covered rocks or the ocean floor. And they do a good job with it too, with their flattened bodies and speckled patterns on their bodies. Now these dudes have been around since 11 million years ago. But don't worry, these sharks don't attack. They'll leave you alone if you leave them alone. The only time they have attacked is when a diver got too close or someone accidentally stepped on one. But no fatalities have ever been reported. In our 3rd spot, we have the Greenland shark. This shark is said to be one of the longest lived vertebrate animals. The shark is also said to be one of the world's largest carnivores and one of the most successful predators in the Arctic waters. These massive sharks are about the same size as a great white shark and eat crustaceans along with things that have fallen off of the ice shelf above. Also, apparently these creepy worm-like parasites like to attach themselves to these sharks' eyes and literally eat their eyes out. Okay, I think that's scarier than the shark itself. But yeah, the Greenland shark is still alive today. They lived for at least 250 years. One of them lived for 400 years. Some may live to be 500. Isn't that crazy? For reference, a great white shark lives for only 70 years. So they got nothing on the Greenland sharks. Coming in at number 2, we have a pygmy right whale. Now, these whales have been around for about 23 million years. In fact, they are considered one of the rarest species of whales. Around 2 million years ago, they were thought to have gone extinct. That was until 2012 when they were rediscovered. Besides that mystery, there's another one, which is scientists don't know where exactly this whale evolved from. There's been much debate over this for a while. What we do know though is that these whales like cool waters, which is what puts them at risk because of climate change. Scientists are worried the rising ocean temperatures will wipe them out for good. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the whale shark. Here's another name that does not match the creature because this animal is not a whale at all. It's not even a whale-shark hybrid. The only reason it's called a whale shark is because of its size. It currently holds many records for size in the animal kingdom. It is the largest shark and largest living non-mammalian creature. And it's been around for at least 26 million years. However, now they are endangered. Now when you think of sharks, you think that they love to eat fish, and if they get a whiff of blood, they'll just go crazy. Well, whale sharks aren't like that at all. In fact, they are filter feeders, meaning they eat plankton, fish eggs, decaying plants, etc. So these sharks are pretty harmless. In fact, an aquarium in Atlanta lets you swim with them. In case that was on your bucket list, there you go.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Arctidus simus. Lions, tigers, and Arctidus simus, oh my. This one's really scary. Also known as the giant short-faced bear, the Arctidus simus went extinct only a mere 11,000 years ago. Yeah, it was once the fastest running bear that ever existed. So already, we have trouble. That's a terrifying fact. Its legs were much longer than today's bears. These were like lanky, fast bears. If the giant short-faced bear stood up on its hind legs, it would be around 13 feet tall. This thing was a beast. Today's bears also have different shaped toes. Today they have pigeon toes, more or less, but back then these guys had straight, forward-facing feet. So they were athletes, pretty much. Giant athletes with quick feet. Paleobiologists conclude that short-faced bears ate only meat. And given the fact that it was 11,000 years ago, I feel very badly for humans that found it. Well, with its powerful nose, realistically it would have found them. Yeah, the giant short-faced bear, I'm gonna say its full name every time. Also, I'm not just gonna say this bear, I'm gonna say the giant short-faced bear every time. The giant short-faced bear needed around 35 pounds of meat every day to survive. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of porridge. Yeah, I hope my porridge isn't too hot. Please God, don't let him burn his bare lips on my porridge. He's gonna eat me. These things are scary, honestly. Like, they're always like scary photos, like drawings of it too. Well, obviously there's no photos. Number 9, Spinosaurus. Yes, another Jurassic Park star, and rightfully so. Look at this thing. The largest carnivorous dinosaur of all time, even bigger than a T-Rex. Can you imagine that? 93 million years ago, they stopped terrorizing the lands of what is now Egypt and Morocco. And if you didn't already guess, its name translates to spine lizard, hence the spine stuff. And that spine was quite long. It was its main feature, you know? The Spinosaurus would measure up to 60 feet long, and aside for its back, one of the most notable features is its 6-foot-long head. It's got a massive head, man. Its mouth was similar to a crocodile's with straight, sharp teeth, not curved teeth. Straight, like a vampire. These straight teeth could stab right through anything, any fish, just a big skewer for a tooth, no problem. Paleontologists from the University of Pennsylvania believe that this guy used to swim as well. Nice, even scarier. Because where the first Spinosaurus fossils were found, well, that used to be Biharia Oasis in Egypt, which was a massive swamp. Water or land, I want nothing to do with this guy. Next. Number 8, Mega Piranha. Don't have to say much about this one. What if I just said Mega Piranha and then it was just the next point? You're like, oh, fair. These things, for starters, were much bigger than today's piranhas, obviously, hence their name. They came in at around 1 meter long. They ruled the waters around Argentina around 6 million years ago, so skinny dipping probably wasn't a thing. I hope not. Its bite force was 50 times its own weight, and like I said earlier, Mega Piranha, bigger. This thing was huge. It was bigger, it was badder, it was weightier, had more to it. Mega Piranha would be around 30 pounds on average. Its bite can out-chomp Megalodon any day. Any Tuesday. Even today, the word piranha makes people scared, makes people anxious. As I was writing this, I was like, oh, I wasn't looking. Because our modern day black piranha, although sure it's only, 2 pounds, its razor sharp teeth can still take a chunk out of you. It's still quite dangerous. Yeah, but they didn't mention any of that in 3D Piranha Double D Part 3 or whatever we're watching now. These things are scary. Number 7, Helicoprion. Perhaps one of the weirdest sea creatures to ever exist. 250 million years ago, that is. This thing looks like a shark, but scientists now know that it was related to chimeras, a fish that separated from the shark family 400 million years ago. Yeah, they were like, I don't like this family. I got some things going on in my mouth. See you later. Good. The 25-foot-long fish was first discovered by Andrei Zarpinsky in Russia back in 1889. He got the name Helicoprion because it translates to spiral saw. Yeah. In their mouth. Horrible. This guy found teeth fossilized in a spiral formation. What a find. He must have been scratching his head for months. Paleontologists all agree today that this was not part of a fin. It wasn't a wacky spinal cord. This guy wasn't, all goofed up. But rather, it was its teeth. It was teeth coiled up, attached to the lower jaw of the fish, and its grasp was the same power roughly to that of a crocodile. Yeah. That's the worst thing I could imagine. So new teeth would form, and in turn these spirals would get longer and curlier. Adult fish would have 4 full rotations in their mouths. Rotations of teeth, that's horrible. 4 rows of teeth, can you imagine? I thought wisdom teeth sucked. Ugh. Number 6, Liopleurodon. Translating to smooth-sided teeth, nice, sounds a little fun, dare I say. The Liopleurodon was anything but a smooth sailor. It was a massive marine reptile from the Mesozoic era, first discovered in the 1800s. It was excavated in France back in 1873. All they got was 3 teeth, and that was enough. But when it was featured in 1999's Walking with Dinosaurs, the BBC series, it was shown as this massive 80-foot-long pliosaur. But they were basing that size off of its skull, which we now know is just much larger than the rest of its body. We got too excited. The thing's literally a bobblehead of a dinosaur, and we're like, yeah, it was bigger, maybe, I don't know. Pliosaurs were the apex predators in Europe. 160 million years ago, most of it was covered in shallow water, so this guy would use its 4 flipper feet to stalk its prey. And researchers believe its snout was a key asset in hunting. He would just sniff for you. They didn't have any gills, so they did need to come up for air every now and then. Again, imagine this big head just appearing out of nowhere and just sniffing you. going back in. That's Loch Ness Monster for sure. Number 5, Megalodon. Of course we have to mention him. Louis Agassiz discovered the Megalodon shark for the first time back in 1843. Yes, the Megalodon was once very real. Louis was a Swiss-born American naturalist and geologist. He discovered some amazing details around glacier activity and extinct fish. Historically, this guy is an OG. He's made quite the impact. He's brilliant. But one of those extinct fish he discovered back in the mid-1800s was the Meg, aka the tooth shark. This was long before Jason Statham was born, so we had no idea what to do with this guy. Megalodons can be found pretty much everywhere in the world except for Antarctica. It favored warm oceans, but similarly to a great white shark, it generates heat when it moves, so the Meg could literally have survived in most places on Earth. It's that big, it would just warm itself up. The largest recorded Megalodon came in at 59 feet, around the same length as a bowling alley. A bowling alley with 7-foot wide jaws and 5 rows of razor sharp teeth. Nice. Nope. Number 4, Elasmosaurus. First discovered in 1868, a military doctor in Kansas found this creature's fossil, passed it along to American paleontologist Edward Cope, who named the plesiosaur. Its neck contained 71 vertebrae. I think I have like 56. I'm pretty close. Not as long, but definitely in the same family, for sure, as this guy. It was super long, which came in handy during those deep dinner dives. When I say long, the Elasmosaurus was around 50 feet in length, so it didn't need to go that close to the surface to get air. He just kind of leaned back and he was good. There's people out there that believe the Loch Ness Monster is just one of these things still swimming around. Honestly, as far as things go, that's probably the best guess. It's probably some sort of version of that, if it exists. Its teeth were sharp enough to eat anything that could fit into its mouth. And just 2 years ago, scientists have unearthed the largest known Elasmosaurus. This thing has been sitting there since the Cretaceous period waiting for us. And I'll be honest, I sure hope we don't find any more, because one water dragon is enough for me. I believe. Great. Stop. Number 3, dire wolves. We'll go a little nicer before we get to our last haunting too. If you're from Southwesteros, this one might hit close to home. Around 10,000 years ago, pretty recently, dire wolves were still a thing. They were pretty common. And if you watch Game of Thrones, you're probably nodding your head right now. It's pretty fun, right? You're getting hyped, or you're getting tissues, either way, spoilers. Canis dirus, aka dire wolves, these beasts were a lot bigger than our average gray wolf. It wasn't like a mega wolf with 3 heads or anything, but it still did weigh a lot more. It was eating good as well. Their jaws were much stronger back in the day, so they could chomp their way through pretty much anyone and anything. Believe it or not, dire wolves would actually hunt down and eat horses. Yeah, after studying their teeth, that was their go-to snack, but they were always easy to catch, I guess. If you're a wolf, they're no problem. Fast versus fast, I would hate to see that. That'd be so scary. Currently, if you're in the market for seeing 400 dire wolf skulls yourself, weird, but here you go. You gotta head to the Page Museum in Southern California. They found hundreds of thousands of skulls in tar pits. So if you don't believe in these things, here you go, history. To thousands of skulls ought to change your mind. Number 2, a T-Rex. Tiny arms, massive head, loud scream. Yeah, we've all seen Jurassic Park, or at least one of the 6 movies they have now. And in real life, T-Rexes were probably a lot worse, to be honest. Around 70 million years ago, this big fella would roam what is now North America. But on average, it would be 20 feet tall, 8 tons, stretched a haunting 40 feet long. And yeah, it had tiny arms, and we can roast them for that, sure. But they clearly didn't need them now, did they? No, they're Old English, buddy. They would just headbutt anything. Look at these things. Its jaws are of course the main bread and butter here. 50 to 60 razor sharp serrated teeth around 9 inches long would definitely help it digest 500 pounds of meat in one serving. Henry Fairfield Osborn, the president of the American Museum of Natural History, named the behemoth back in 1905. The name Tyrannosaurus Rex comes from the Greek and Latin words meaning tyrant lizard king. Yep, I'd say he nailed it. Pretty good. Godzilla has a nice ring, but tyrant lizard king? That's pretty groovy. That's way better. I'm gonna change my Xbox name to that. Tyrant Lizard King 69. Number 1, Carnotaurus. Okay, remember that animated Disney movie just called Dinosaur? That movie that had this guy as the main villain? Yeah, that was way too scary for kids. I'm 27 now, I'll say it with full confidence. That scene was too scary. Cried in the theaters, I remember it. I still remember it. That and Ice Age weirdly got me, I don't know. Carnotaurus, they roamed the earth 69 million years ago. They were around the same size as a T-Rex, they were around 29 feet long, but they're nicknamed meat-eating bulls, so they were scarier. They would run at around 25 miles an hour. They're one of the fastest and largest moving theropods to ever live, ever, and its arms were even smaller than a T-Rex. But again, before you laugh, before you go, haha, little arm guy, that didn't matter for the meat-eating bull, because this guy has horns, just like the devil. Yeah, you were gonna say the devil. Yeah, he's oddly similar. The red skin, it's the whole shebang. The Carnotaurus was discovered in 1984 by Jose Bonaparte in Argentina. They've only discovered 1 skeleton of these things, so hopefully there weren't too many of these sprinting around. Hopefully, but again, as that movie depicted, it was a horrible time to live. Thanks Disney. All their dinosaur movies, eh? They're really nice now. The dinosaur movies are nice. Back in the day, we had this guy as the villain. Yeah, we didn't have Arlo, the good dinosaur. Now I'm upset.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the splendid poison frog. The splendid poison frog is a species of poison dart frog that was once abundant and thriving and could be found in its habitat in western Panama. Researchers believed that a citrid fungus outbreak in their habitat led to a rapid decline of the species. In fact, this fungus is responsible for the deaths of a mass amount of amphibian species, as the number of amphibians has been dropping at an alarming rate in the last few decades. Because of the fact that these were a species of frog that was once an extremely popular pet, it is thought that there might be unknown specimens which are still alive in captivity, but unfortunately none have been found in the wild, and there aren't currently any that exist in zoos or research collections. The last time one of these frogs was recorded was in 1992, their fungus outbreak occurred in 1996, and as of 2020 they have been listed as an extinct species. In our number 9 spot today we have the moa. These animals were giant flightless birds that could be found in New Zealand. They were so tall that they reached around 12 feet and they weighed more than 500 pounds. I'm just saying, there are smaller birds that exist today that are honestly pretty terrifying. A 12-foot tall 500-pound bird is actually a nightmare. While these guys had little predators before human settlement arrived, their populations quickly declined after they began being hunted by humans. It is said that actually within 100 years of human settlement in the area, their extinction occurred. It is said that the moa have close relatives that still exist in South America, and scientists are working to find a way to see if these relatives carry the moa gene, and if so, could they be used to bring back this species of giant birds. In our number 8 spot today we have the western black rhinoceros. The western black rhino was a subspecies of black rhinoceros, and they made their home in the savanna of sub-Saharan Africa. These guys were unfortunately the victims of poaching, which led to their rapid decline. Isn't it a bit ironic? People got so greedy trying to kill these incredible animals so that they could make money, and now they can't make any money off of them because they killed them all. What a genius business plan, and just genuinely good people. Anyways, this species first originated around 7 to 8 million years ago, and for most of the 1900s, it was the highest population of rhino species. That all changed, however, as from 1970 to 1992, the population of black rhinos in general decreased by 96%. Other than poachers, another main culprit for the decline was farmers who killed the animals to protect their crops that were placed close to rhino territories. The last sighting of a western black rhinoceros was in 2006 in Cameroon's northern province, and sadly the subspecies was officially declared extinct in 2011. In our number 7 spot today we have the Caspian tiger. During their time on this planet, Caspian tigers were an animal that was native to eastern Turkey, northern Iran, Mesopotamia, the Caucasus around the Caspian Sea, Central Asia to northern Afghanistan, as well as in western China. They were everywhere. Until the Middle Ages, these tigers could also be found in Ukraine and southern Russia, but of course this is a list of extinct animals, so what led to their extinction? Well, it is believed that the demise of this tiger population started with the Russian colonization of Turkestan during the late 19th century. During this time, the tigers were being killed by large parties of sportsmen as well as military personnel, and they didn't just hunt the tigers, but they also began hunting large numbers of the tiger's main food source. This, plus the fact that much of their home was being turned into agricultural developments, and you have a perfect recipe for causing the decline of a species. As of 2003, the species was officially declared extinct. Some scientists want to try to bring them back by introducing a very close relatives of these tigers into the lands that Caspian tigers once used to roam, where they expect it to adapt. In our number 6 spot today we have the Morian viviparous tree snail. This was a species of air-breathing tropical land snails that were endemic to French Polynesia. This extinction was caused by a chain of events that happened after something humans did. The African land snail was introduced into Tahiti in 1967 as a food source, but it quickly escaped and began to destroy crops. Biologists wanted to attempt to control the African land snail, so they decided to introduce the rosy wolf snail to the area in 1977. This went haywire as the rosy wolf snail didn't just control the population of African land snails, but rather started to eradicate all of the snails that were native to the area, which of course includes our little friend, the Morian viviparous forest tree snail. So this one little introduction led to them becoming totally extinct in the wild. These snails do still exist in captivity, and there have been attempts to re-release them into the wild, but the rosy wolf snail continues to prey upon them, so at this point it looks like they will never be able to return to the wild, which is very sad. It sucks that the intention really was to help, but things just did not go according to plan at all. In our number 5 spot today we have aurochs. These guys are an extinct species of cattle which are thought to be the ancestors of modern domestic cattle. These guys were absolutely massive, one of the largest herbivores that existed during the Holocene actually. It is said that their populations began to decline during the late Holocene, which is due to habitat loss as well as hunting. It is believed that the last individual died in 1627 in a forest in Poland. Many of these creatures are believed to be depicted in cave paintings and even Bronze Age figurines. There are some modern cattle species that carry some auroch DNA, so there are certain teams of scientists who, since 2009, have been selectively breeding cattle in hopes of being able to bring back these long gone species. In our number 4 spot today we have the woolly rhinoceros. We talked about another kind of rhino before, but now we have a woolly one. I didn't even know these ones used to exist. These guys were a species that was quite common in Europe and Asia during the Pleistocene epoch, and they survived up until the end of the last glacial period. These guys were an animal that is seen depicted in cave paintings as well, and we have even discovered their bones and remains that were mummified and preserved in permafrost. These guys were stocky and they had a thick woolly coat which helped them survive in the cold tundra environment. In 2020 there was actually one of the best preserved remains of one of these animals ever found, which has prompted questions about possibly reviving the species. In our number 3 spot today we have the elephant bird. Apparently birds used to be massive, because here we have another species of now extinct giant flightless birds. These guys are said to have once lived in Madagascar, and it is thought that they went extinct somewhere around 1000 to 1200 AD, likely as a result of human activity. It is said that these guys stood to be about 10 feet tall and that they could reach insane weights of 730 kilograms, which would make them the world's heaviest bird. I'm just saying, I'm glad they were flightless. Several of the bones of these birds have been found with tool marks, which means that for years these birds were able to coexist with humans. In the end, researchers are working to see if the remains we have found will be enough to possibly bring this species back into our modern world, and if so, what would the implications be? In our number 2 spot today we have the Tasmanian tiger. These guys are actually less like tigers that we are used to, and they're actually marsupials, but not really like the marsupials we know today either. These guys are a carnivorous marsupial that was native to Australia mainland in the islands of Tasmania and New Guinea. These guys had anatomy and adaptations that bared similarities to both tigers and wolves despite being unrelated. They were certainly an apex predator at their time, and as of now, their closest ancestors that are still surviving are the Tasmanian devil and the Noombat. Because of these living relatives, it is thought that scientists might be able to bring back these creatures by selecting certain parts of their DNA. In our number 1 spot today we have the woolly mammoth. We would certainly be missing a very important animal on this list today if we didn't include the woolly mammoth. These guys were of course a species of mammoth, and in fact they were one of the last in line of mammoth species. Because of the fact that in both Alaska and Siberia there were frozen carcasses discovered, they're actually one of the most well-studied extinct creatures. Exactly why or how they were driven to extinction is widely debated, and another thing people like to debate is whether or not we should try and bring them back. There was a genome project completed in 2015, and since then it has been proposed that the species could be revived through a few different means, but no one has yet taken the leap. What do you guys think about reviving extinct animals? Are we on board? Are we terrified? Let me know down below in the comments.